Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Happy Friday to you all, and welcome to episode 400 of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. It's great to have you with us, Andrew Paterson and Michael Remis, and we got a great show for you. Busy sports day and sports weekend. We got the Jays playoffs against the Mariners beginning basically right after we'll be finished broadcasting live here on YouTube this afternoon. Certainly get to that. The playoffs are underway right now with the Tampa-Cleveland game still underway as we begin today's show. But lots of Jets talk. Ken Wiebe's going to join us. A final preseason game tonight in Calgary. Pretty much a dress rehearsal for a week today when the Jets open their season at home against the New York Rangers. We'll get to who's in, who's out, and a couple of player moves just being announced by the team over the course of the last couple minutes. So we'll start off with that. Ken Wiebe's going to join us. Of course, the Bombers are in action tomorrow, looking to go to 14-2. Could potentially clinch the West this week, depending on what happens in their game, as well as the BC-Toronto game. Ed Tait's going to jump on. And then later on in the show, this is going to be really fun, especially for Winnipeg Jet fans old enough to remember the 1.0 era. The legendary voice of the 1.0 Jets, Curt Keilback, has a new book out called 2 Minutes for Talking to Myself. And we're going to bring Curt on with some great stories of Winnipeg Jets history, the first year in Phoenix, and some of the great personalities that he's crossed paths with over his life in the broadcast booth. So all that coming up. And of course, it's Friday. Marbles will be dropped at the end of the program. All right, let's get to it and welcome in a very sharp-dressed Michael Remis on the program. Remo, what is up? How are you?
I'll be honest, I'm doing this show and I'm like a lot less comfortable than normal. Wearing a suit, I don't know, maybe this thing's like choke me. I just feel stiff. I'm like, got to move around. It's like an athletic event here, managing this wall of screens in front of me. So being in a suit, I think it hinders my mobility. I'll try to tough it out through this one. I do feel, I do look good. So I am feeling kind of good, but it's a bit different.
Look good, feel good, play good, sound good. Is that the way it sounds?
Yeah, I'd rather be in like my regular t-shirt or.
Well, hey, special occasion. It's not like we do this all the time, but I guess the perfect time to thank everybody for the incredible support that we've had. And, listen, we got to also thank the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day, including our friends at Coolbet, Princess Auto, Not Auto Corp, Consolidated Supply, Vita Health, Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Aikens Lake, Culligan Water, Royal Sports, Canadian Club Whiskey, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Assiniboia Downs, and of course, Little Brown Jug. And Remo, we do have to thank our guy, Andrew, Alex, and the gang over at F Apparel for their great support and of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And I will tell you, I'm sort of with you. I mean, I'm a guy that would far prefer wearing a hoodie as I normally do. But I have to admit, the new suit from F Apparel, very comfy, fits great. And it's nice to class it up a little bit. By the way, I know everyone in the chat's asking, and I told you I was going to debut this when I brought it on. So went down to F. Guys took great care of me, figured out what the color I wanted, the style. But there is a couple things that you can do, and I don't know, maybe it was seeing all those kids at the draft flash the interesting liners. Remo, what do you think about this?
Wow,
the WST inside liner of the suit. Definitely the best suit I've ever got.
That's crazy. They when I went to get mine, Andrew asked me if I wanted that. I said I'm not cool enough to pull that off. So
that's true. You're not.
So I didn't get that. I'm like, give me the most generic thing you have. What I got, like some paisley pattern in here. You can't see whatever. You can't see it.
Next one in there. Now that it's been done and you see how great it looks, now you'll be able to do that. The next time you get set up over at F.
Well, I got like a standard like blue suit. I think we got the same blue. We're like the Arizona Coyotes management team that all wore the blue suits at the draft. That's us right now.
That's right. WST issued F Apparel suits.
Yeah. So for my next one, maybe I'll get like something flashier. I think that's the plan. I'll have to talk to them and figure it out.
You need to get a suit like Joe Burrow wore last week on Thursday Night Football. With the shorter cuffs, he had it was a white and black floral pattern, I believe. Oh, there's all sorts of stuff they can do for you. Anyways, big thanks to Andrew and the gang at F Apparel. They've been awesome supporters of ours. They are the go-to spot for menswear and custom suits in the city of Winnipeg. We'll let you know more a little bit later about some great specials they've got going on heading into the fall as well. But Remo, let's get right to it because Ken's going to join us a little bit later on. And we'll get to the why not question of the day in just a moment. But as you mentioned to me, just as we went on the air, the Winnipeg Jets have made a couple of announcements about a couple of players that we've been talking a lot about throughout the training camp and preseason.
Yeah, we got the alert from Jets PR literally 12:59, which was great. Well done.
Shout out
well
to,
done,
you know what,
Jets.
Browner, Gregor, and the boys. If that was done purposely to get it done by 1, we greatly appreciate it. Right hot off the press.
Yeah.
The Winnipeg Jets have released Brad Lambert to the Manitoba Moose, and the Jets have placed Johnny Kovacevic on waivers for the purpose of being assigned to the Manitoba Moose. There was a lot of talk, and I'll be interested to get Ken's take on Johnny Kovacevic and, him going back to Manitoba. There was some thought that he might end up being sort of a 7th, 8th defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets. But as I said before, if you're going to get a guy through waivers, right now is the time to do it because every team in the National Hockey League is sitting, going over some tough decisions with guys making their rosters. And in a couple weeks, with injuries and games being played, there might be more interest or might be more ability for a team to take on a player like Johnny Kovacevic. So I do know in the organization, fingers will be crossed that we will get to the waiver report in 24 hours and fingers crossed that Johnny Kovacevic will still be part of the organization.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Teams are kind of sorting out what they have. And, we've seen Johnny Kovacevic with the Moose and, you have an attachment to him, but I don't know if the other teams have that. They're attached to their own guys. So we'll wait and see, but they're clearly going, not worrying about, contract status. And they're saying, hey, this guy, there's other guys ahead of him on the depth chart. We thought maybe they would, because they didn't want to expose him to waivers, they would, send down one of the guys that's waivers exempt. They're not doing that. He's being sent down. So we'll 1 o'clock tomorrow, we will find out if he gets claimed. No one has been claimed off waivers in the last week since they started doing it. So maybe the Jets figure this will be another guy who doesn't get claimed.
We'll see the final cuts being made all around the league, and the waiver wire will be quite busy, I imagine, over the course of this weekend. Speaking of this weekend, the NHL season is technically starting today. We've got a couple games overseas to kick off the year before everything gets going back in North America next week.
Yeah, right now in Prague, Czech Republic, Predators, Sharks. Very odd. When they have these two games before the season really starts on Tuesday. The Jets' first game is a week from today. I get it. Baseball does the too, where they'd have the games in Japan a week before opening day. So grow the game, Huss, in Czech Republic. Although I think a lot of people do have hockey drafts still this weekend and leading up to Tuesday. So a little afternoon hockey. Not on Sportsnet. They're showing playoff baseball. We are pumped for the Jays at 3. So, yeah, we got the 2 other game. We didn't also touch on Brad Lambert being released to the Moose.
That was next. Now, and I don't believe, and we'll have to ask Ken about this as far as the contract. With is he signing an ELC? Is this going to be a AHL deal? How exactly that is going to work? I don't think that there's an issue on that. Brad Lambert will be signed at some point very soon, if it hasn't already. Just not sure that has been announced. So Lambert going to the Moose, and I am fully behind this move right now. It has been so much fun watching Brad Lambert. I think it'll be great for the Moose, to be perfectly honest with you, to have a player like that. And, to have him starting his North American pro journey along with Chaz Lucius at the same time as real key members of the Jets' future and having them play in the same building, I think is going to be great. And I don't know, from my perspective, with what we saw Brad Lambert do in the preseason, especially the first 2 games against, sure, it was more AHL competition or guys on the bubble, but that's still a big step up from the Western Hockey League. So I'm fully behind Brad Lambert starting off the season with the Moose. Hopefully he has a great year, gets used to the grind of the North American professional game. And I still think that depending on what happens up top of the Jets lineup at some point over the course of the season, based on injuries or availability, I certainly think Brad Lambert could potentially get a call up and play some NHL games this season.
Yeah, Jamie Thomas was on here earlier this week saying that Lambert would be great for the WHL. I just saw the chat going crazy, being like, "No, Jamie, what are you?"
Yeah, that was a bad take.
He triggered everyone with that. I don't know if I
gave him the opportunity to back off of that after we'd seen it, and he doubled down on it. But hey, this is great. People have all sorts of different opinions on player development. Mm-hmm. But I think it was pretty clear that Brad Lambert is ready for the challenge of the pro game right now. And certainly he's already got some experience playing, albeit in a different league and a different level in Finland last year. So it'll be fun for Winnipeg fans to be able to get out. Moose home opener, by the way. And I believe we may do some tickets for that next week. It's the day after the Jets home opener. So Friday night is going to be Jets Rangers at Canada Life Center. And I'm pretty sure it's an afternoon game the next day, 2:00 on the 15th. We'll get a chance to see the Moose for the first time. And listen, I know the last couple of years have been really weird with COVID and just getting back into it. I went to a number of Moose games in the second half of last season. I'll tell you what, I think I and many other Jet fans will be spending more time at Canada Life Center watching the Moose this year, knowing that Chaz Lucius and particularly Brad Lambert are going to be lacing it up for Mark Morrison.
Yeah, and I agree. And it was pretty clear the first couple preseason games that he played that Brad Lambert, he's got NHL speed. He's, if you have him in the AHL, you can call him up if you need him, get him used to the North American game. I don't know if, going to the WHL and, having an easy go there, putting up however many points would be the best. Give him, challenge him a bit, but also set him up to have success in the AHL with the Moose. So looking forward to that. And yeah, a big weekend of hockey next weekend with the Jets home opener Friday and the Moose Saturday and Sunday afternoon. And my son, he's done with naps now. So I'm going to try to get him out to his first hockey game at some point. Some of these afternoon ones are really great for me. So I'm looking forward to trying to get out to a couple for sure.
Well, definitely. I mean, the Moose will be a great option. And, of course, the Ice as well. I mean, great start, 5-0. I think they're in Regina tonight, starting this crazy stretch of games, their first 13 on the road. And just while we're mentioning the Ice, should give a congratulations to Carson Lambos, who has been named the captain of the Winnipeg Ice, back from his NHL stint in training camp. High expectations. The Ice, the number 1 ranked team in Canada in junior hockey. And they got a stud on the blue line in Carson Lambos, who will be wearing the C for the Winnipeg Ice this season. All right, Remo, let's get to the lineup for tonight's game before we welcome Ken in. And I think Rick Bowness has been pretty clear that this is the look that will likely take the Ice for the first game of the season. Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers, Perfetti, Dubois, Wheeler, Barron, Lowry, and now Saku Menelainen is in the spot of Mason Appleton, who's nicked up with an upper body injury, but they do think and expect him to be able to play on Friday. And then the fourth line of Dominic Toninato, Gustafsson, and Jansen Harkins, with Sam Gagner being the 13th forward. What will be interesting is when Appleton comes back, does that mean Menelainen is the placeholder and will potentially be going to the Manitoba Moose? Or does Menelainen's getting an opportunity to play with Lowry and would fit in on the fourth line in the place of either Toninato or Harkins? And I guess the other question is, where does Sam Gagner end up? Because Gagner certainly looked like he could be a very, very versatile player for the Winnipeg Jets with his performance in the last game out against Calgary.
Yeah, just going by how they've used placeholders, I think Menelainen goes down. It's just too easy. He doesn't have to go through waivers, right? He's waivers exempt. That's correct.
That's what I heard. He's 28, so I was somewhat surprised at that, but I guess where he is on his contract, because he started, then went back to Europe. I guess that I'm pretty sure that would be the case why he was. But yeah, that has been reported that Menelainen does not need to clear waivers. And to be honest, for a guy that's been out of the league for the last 3 or 4 years playing overseas, even if he was on waivers, I'm not sure that would be a guy other teams would be picking up right off the way, knowing that you have to keep him on your 23-man roster if you do take him off waivers.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. Sam Gagner is interesting. I figured he was a lock for the lineup. Maybe he's just not playing this preseason game so they can get another look. Against Menelainen and Calgary's dressing like pretty much their roster. We can pull that up after, but Gagner was skating with the extras, and they kind of eased him into preseason. I mean, he didn't play the first couple games, so I figured he'd be a lock on that fourth line or even third line if you need him. I mean, he can play anywhere. We talked about that a lot yesterday, so we'll wait and see what the final decisions are there. But I still think I think he's going to get sent down, assuming he's waivers exempt.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. I think this is a big game for Jansen Harkins, who's getting into the lineup with Appleton out. He'll be skating with Gustafsson, as we mentioned, and Toninato on that fourth line. And, he's in a dogfight right now. I mean, there's some other guys that have emerged in Menelainen as well. And, of course, the addition of Sam Gagner makes it a little tougher to stick in a spot. You're certainly not there by acclamation. Man, I don't think Harkins has had the camp, certainly that's separated himself from some of the other competition. So even as this could be a bit of a dress rehearsal right now, I still think that there's much to be learned about the guys in that bottom six and what the best setup for Rick Bowness is a week from today when things count against the New York Rangers. But let's talk about the blue line, Remo. This has been an ongoing conversation for us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk throughout the summer, how things were going to shake out. We found out one thing. Johnny Kovacevic is on waivers and could be sent to the Manitoba Moose if he clears. But it was the three-way dance, the ladder match, if you will, the contract on a pole. No one had grabbed it yet, although it looks like Ville Heinola is maybe a few steps higher on the ladder right now than Dylan Sandberg and Logan Stanley, as it looks like Ville is in and playing with Nate Schmidt tonight. That is significant.
Yeah, it seems like he's going to get power play time as well. Mike putting out the power play lines. He's on power play 2 with Nate Schmidt, Wheeler Perfetti, and Barron. So Heinola seems to be a bit in the driver's seat, and they like what he creates. We thought maybe Sandberg was up there, but as you said, no one had really gone out and grabbed or, reached for the title belt or the contract at the top of the ladder. I'm loving these three-way dance wrestling ladder match references when it comes to this training camp battle, but that's what it's been. It's been kind of everyone standing around, staring at each other, waiting for someone to make the first move. And Heinola, he's been on the score sheet quite a bit this preseason. You see the offense he's able to create, and I think they're looking for that.
He's been noticeable, all right. He's been noticeable both on the good and the sometimes not so good. There's been a few pizzas that have been delivered by Ville, but he has, I think, shown that there's a part of his game that the other guys don't have. And I think Rick Bowness has identified that can be something that can really help the team. And I'll say this, and I think this is a great thing for the young players in the organization right now. And again, I don't want to always compare Bowness to Maurice and the Maurice era, but it's sort of hard not to when we've been in a certain mindset for so long. I don't think Paul Maurice had very much patience for younger players making mistakes. And Ville Heinola has certainly made a few mistakes that, cost the team through the preseason, ended up in the back of the net. But the way Rick Bowness has handled him, throwing him right back out, I think he's done a lot for Ville's confidence. And he looks like he's more and more comfortable each and every game that he's playing. Now, we'll see what happens come regular season. But I think a lot of people, myself included, excited for the possibility of Ville Heinola to get regular NHL time. And that's something that we have to find out, whether he can bring what he's done at the American Hockey League level and help the Winnipeg Jets win hockey games. And it certainly seems like he's got the leg up right now on the competition when it comes to being that opening day lineup. But again, nothing set in stone right now, but a big opportunity to be part of that top 6 playing with Nate Schmidt tonight.
It's funny. I read an article on ESPN yesterday by Ryan Clark, who wrote about young defensemen coming into the league. And it's not exactly, your big hulking D. It's smallerish guys who have speed, guys who can play offensive and move the puck. And it really seems like the game is going that way. And someone in our comments said, if having small defensemen won you a cup, every team would do it. And I was like, hey man, Cale Makar's one of the best in the league. Best skaters in the league, best defenseman. What is he? 5'11". They had Sam Girard below 6 feet. Devon Taves, not the biggest guy either. So I mean, you look at their team. I'm not saying the Jets have that kind of talent, but it just shows that you can win with smallerish D that are good puck-moving guys, can skate and contribute offensively while helping out defensively. And Heinola has dominated the AHL, in the last year. I mean, how are you going to know what he can do at the NHL if you don't give him a shot? And I think he's earned it.
Yeah, and listen, you sometimes have to let some young players play through a few mistakes. It's a lot easier to do that in the preseason than the regular season, when sometimes those mistakes can cost you games and valuable points in the standings. But I do think that Ville Heinola is at the point where he looks like he's getting this opportunity and he's got to go and make the most of it. And yeah, there'll be the odd setback, but I think what they've seen in his puck moving ability, the offense that he can bring, and what he can do on the power play is something that really can fit within this roster. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays with Schmidt tonight. And then, of course, what happens as we get ready for it next Friday and the Winnipeg Jets home opener. All right, we're going to have Ken Wiebe join us in just a moment here. But before we do that, let me give a big shout out to the gang over at Consolidated Supply, our newest sponsor here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Consolidated Supply have been leaders in the golf industry for a long time, and that's good news if you need expert irrigation techniques that you can do yourself to get your lawn or property looking like a beautiful fairway. But for those of you that are done with grass or have needs for artificial turf, they're also the artificial turf leaders in town and in the province, in case you're thinking about re-sodding something that you don't have to cut, or maybe building that dream putting green in the backyard. And speaking of dream putting green in the backyard, if you are thinking of tricking out your property, working on that backyard oasis, they've got an incredible selection of beautiful hot tubs, as well as outdoor kitchens and outdoor kitchen projects waiting for you at Consolidated Supply. And of course, when it comes to golf carts, they are the all things club car dealer in Manitoba. 2, 4, 6-seaters, more than just getting you around the golf course or the lot. Consolidated Supply, pop down and see them at 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more on everything that they can do for you at cte.ca. Wow, our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market, always great supporters of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And with Thanksgiving weekend here, it's the best spot to pop by. You can always get great prices on natural and organic supplements and beauty products, but also groceries with Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products. And of course, with back to school here and the changing of the seasons, Vita Health is also a great spot for school-friendly snacks and lunch items and great immunity products like vitamin C and D. And hey, if you can't make it down to one of the stores, visit their new fully shoppable website at myvita.ca to buy online, schedule a delivery or in-store pickup. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives with 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. And I mentioned I went down working on some pretty exciting stuff with our friends at Wallace & Wallace. Now, Wallace & Wallace has been the fencing experts and leaders in Winnipeg for decades. They literally have every kind of fencing or protection for your business or property you could name it. But many people don't know that they're also the garage door leaders and overhead door leaders here in Manitoba, working with Clopay, the largest garage door manufacturer in the world. Now, a new garage door can add up to 4% to the value of your home. They've got 161 different styles, so there's certainly one that fits for you. However, they can also help you out with maintenance or repair if you don't need a new garage door, but are having a bit of an issue with the one you have right now. Pop down and see him, Lawson Road, just off of Kenaston, and online at wallacedoors.com. All right, heading west now, we welcome in one Ken Wiebe of Sportsnet. Kenny, Happy Friday to you, and cheers to you. I know you tweeted this out, but speaking of guys signing contracts, congratulations to you for there it is, company man. They finally sent you a little Q-zip to rock. Seriously, congratulations though, and we're certainly excited to get much more Kenny Wiebe content on Sportsnet over the course of the next years.
Yes, thank you very much, Huss. Great to be with you and Remo here. And yeah, I mean, it's been an awesome 2 years. The freelance gig can be challenging at times, but they gave me a great platform, and very thankful to be moving more into a full-time role. And it's going to be a fun year ahead. Also, part of what the announcement means is that I won't just be covering the Jets. Should be at that West final on November 13th, and we tried to crank out a little bit more content now that we're not on a pitch count here, but going to be providing content for all platforms. Super excited about it. And probably the best news in terms of the ability to report is that we should be traveling a little bit more and getting a little bit back to pre-COVID times here, which is one of the things that's great about being in Calgary and moving on to Banff here for the next couple of days. So thank you very much, Huss. Thanks for your support throughout the entire process, and also thanks to the listeners and viewers who kept their interest level up, which allowed us to move to this next part of the equation here.
Well, I'm glad to mention that you mentioned that you might be doing some non-Jets things, because it would be nice to see the CFL and the Bombers get a little bit more run from your now employer. So that's on your shoulders, Ken. Let's go.
One quick thing that some folks who are listening may not even know this. Mike Kareen, one of my colleagues there, he is a previous colleague at Post Media. He has been writing a weekly CFL column. I do believe that he's had a couple of Bomber things in there, but definitely going to try to enhance that coverage as well and assist with what's being done.
Boots on the ground,
exactly,
right here for the back-to-back champs.
Let's go.
Listen, let's get right to it. We'll talk about the lineup tonight, but just coming across the wire as we started the program, 2 moves. Johnny Kovacevic going on waivers for a assignment to the Manitoba Moose, and Brad Lambert released from the Jets going to the Moose. Maybe hit on both of those, but start off with Lambert. And what's the contract situation? Does that mean he is on the verge of signing an ELC, or will this be an AHL deal? How's that going to work, Ken?
Yeah, I was listening when I was waiting at the airport today to a couple of people you've had on this week earlier on talking about the subject. So to me, the verbiage is nothing to be concerned about. Release to the Moose is only said that way because of the absence of an ELC for this very moment. It doesn't mean anything that there's something is afoot necessarily, but I do expect this ELC to get done shortly. I do expect him. I know you've been asking all your people this week, where do you think the best place for him is? The best place for him right now is with the Manitoba Moose. I think that we saw the other night, Brad had 2 excellent games, Huss. There's no doubt about that. He was electrifying. He brought people out of their seats. But what we saw, it's a little bit different going down the wall against Noah Hannafin than it is against a guy playing for the Bakersfield Condors or the Laval Rocket. That's to take nothing away from what Brad did. Brad had an exceptional training camp under the circumstances. I also think that Brad has played well enough to warrant a look with the Jets at some point this season, but not starting with the Jets is not, it's not a mark on Brad Lambert, nor is it a sign that the Jets are not giving young guys a chance. Brad is going to be given a chance to play important and valuable minutes at the American Hockey League level. Whether he's ready in October, November, December, April, that's up to Brad. But he wasn't necessarily ready for top 6 minutes right now. We've seen it in recent years, Huss, with Nick Patan. We saw it in Atlanta with Alex Burmistrov. Those guys, you don't shoehorn these guys into a 4th-line role just for the sake of giving them a 9-game trial. Do I think Brad will get up to 9 games this year? He certainly could, depending on the circumstances. But he had an exceptional camp. This move is not a punishment to Brad Lambert. It is a congratulations on a solid impression. Now go down and work your behind off, work your tail off, and give them no choice but to give you a chance when one comes up. Secondly, with Kovacevic, Huss, it's interesting. And I would say this, the most interesting part about today's waivers is that Kyle Capobianco and Johnny Kovacevic are not on waivers at the same time, because the way that we see it, they're probably in the 8, 9, 10 slots as it comes. What this signifies to me is that they didn't want to risk losing both of them on the same day. And I understand general managers sometimes are a little bit cautious when it comes to waivers. Would they have been claimed at the same time? Unlikely, but I mean, a team can't risk that happening. So if Kovacevic gets claimed or if he gets through, I think you could see Capobianco either start the year as the number 8 or potentially be subjected to waivers at some point. But again, this isn't a criticism on Johnny Kovacevic. I think he's shown well at times this year in training camp, definitely in the preseason games. But right now, the Jets are going to see if they can run him through because there's going to be a lot of guys on waivers this weekend here. What it means for the overall equation, I've got some thoughts, Huss. I know that your next question would have been about Heinola. I don't necessarily think this means Heinola is ahead in the competition, even though he's playing in the last game. I think he is still very much in the competition. But to me, I think Heinola, it's not this simple. It's not you win or lose depending on the way you play tonight. But I don't see this as a guarantee of him being in the game 1 lineup. But I do think he's given Rick Bowness and the coaching staff food for thought, and that he is still definitely very much in the running for the competition. But the fact that, Josh
Wouldn't he
Morris
have a leg up just based? I mean, Rick was pretty clear. He was hoping to have this lineup tonight pretty much mirror what we expect to see on the Friday night. And I mean, the fact of the matter is only one of those 3 guys is in the lineup, and it's Ville Heinola.
Yeah, well, this is what I would say to that. What did Rick also say to me when I asked him about Ville Heinola on the first time I asked him? I think it was on day 2 of training camp. This is definitely an opportunity for Ville Heinola to shine. I think the Jets would prefer that he shine. But if Ville has a tough outing, that would fall under these guys give themselves a chance to cut themselves scenario. So I'm not saying the Jets want that by any stretch. I'm not saying anybody wants that. Nobody wants that. But they're giving him another shot. They know what Dylan Samberg is bringing to the table. We know that Ville Heinola has a higher ceiling. It just depends on what type of lineup Rick Bowness plans to go with for game 1 of the season. It could very well include Ville Heinola and Nate Schmidt. I like the idea of that pairing. I personally prefer Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon potentially as a secondary or even primary shutdown pairing. But I think that job is probably going to belong to Dylan DeMello and Josh Morrissey based on what we've seen. And I think that other job is still open. Ville Heinola very much in the mix. I love what you said earlier this week, Huss. The one thing that we've learned about Ville Heinola that's maybe a little bit different than last year, when the mistakes are happening this training camp, his ability to forget the mistake and put it behind him has been on display. Last year, I would have said he got a little bit tentative or cautious after a mistake happened. So I see growth with Heinola. I see a higher ceiling, but it all depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Dylan Samberg is the safer pick right now. Do you want to play a big guy with Neil Pionk and then go Schmidt and Dillon? That's what we're going to find out after tonight. But this is the thing. There's still a bunch of practices to be happening before next Friday when the opener happens. The competition is very much ongoing. And I think it's not just what happens today. It could be what happens today and in those 4 practices leading up to it. Dylan Samberg, Ville Heinola are definitely ahead of where Logan Stanley is. We'll definitely be watching with interest. I know the other thing you talked about this week, could this open up the door for a move on the Jets blue line? And my answer to that is yes. We talked about waivers. I mean, this is also I just noticed it go across the wire. I mean, we've been talking about that third line, Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. What about Matthias Janmark? He's on waivers. I mean, that means he didn't have a great camp with Edmonton, or it means they're trying to squeeze every cap dollar available to them. But to me, Janmark is a guy that, Rick Bowness would obviously be familiar with from his time in Dallas. He could easily fit into the 3rd or 4th line mix with the Jets, depending on how their pro scouts feel about him. But I would imagine that Rick Bowness would see him as a penalty killer who could give you the versatility to either play with Sam Gagner or maybe even jump up on the Lowry line, depending on how Morgan Barron plays tonight.
Hey, Kent, let me just back up somewhere mid-trip to the buffet there. The Heinola, and you brought this up, and I'm with you, and we've talked about it. The ability to compartmentalize mistakes and get out there and get back to doing what he needs to do. And we've seen it in spades. Really rough starts. That goal that ended up in the back of their net on Saturday, and then consistently being put back out, given opportunities to shine and show what he can do, and he's come through with that. How much of that is Ville maturing as a player, and how much of that is the influence of Rick Bowness? Because I'm not sure those opportunities would have been there under previous staffs.
Yeah, no, for sure. I see growth in Billy's game. I see maturity in him as an individual and as a player. And here's the thing, Huss. In order for him to succeed at this level, he has to play that way because there are going to be mistakes that are made. That is what happens when you have a young player who has a little bit of risk in his game, or maybe even medium risk. I mean, I'm not going to say high risk yet, but there's also the ceiling portion. I mean, this is a guy that can give you a lot. He did an excellent job running the first power play the other day, but I'm not sure that, based on the practices this week, he's not running the first power play, but he will be involved in the second power play, which still says a lot about him as a player, that he got the trust from Brad Lauer to have that opportunity at one point and could be given that opportunity again, quite frankly. I liked how he's played. Ultimately, how many mistakes can you live with versus what Villy is going to be able to produce offensively? Because he has shown that offense. His offensive side is ready. And here's the thing, Huss, we've talked about it. I wrote about it again this week. Villy, in order to take the next step defensively, has to be defending against NHL players. He's figured it out at the AHL level, how to defend better. Of course, there's room for improvement, but you're only going to figure out if he can do it at the NHL level, if he's doing it at the NHL level. So it's interesting. There's also a scenario where maybe they both start the year. I know that some folks are speculating, what if they went 11? I don't see the Jets going 11-7 personally, Huss. I think now you're giving both of those young guys, you're not putting either one of them in a position to succeed, even though, yes, you could have Hanel on the second power play and Samberg on the second penalty kill. To me, I think I don't see 11-7. That's my quick vote for that. I think both those guys are going to get plenty of run and plenty of games this year. But until what we've been talking about since August or even July, Huss, until the logjam is alleviated, right now, only one of those two guys is in the opening day lineup. At least that's how I see it. Don't you feel the same way?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's exactly where we're at right now. And that's why there was so much intrigue about, who's in this lineup tonight and who is getting this opportunity to play in the final preseason game. Which is, I just mentioned, Rick sort of teed off that this would be what he would like to see. And, just bring it back to the back and forth between those two guys. I mean, the special teams to me seems, a very important part of this decision. We've always heard of coaches, guys in those depth positions, are going to be there for playing roles. And we've seen Villy do some pretty nice things on the power play. And I think part of that, it's been interesting, Ken, and I'm not sure if you noticed this as well, seeing more veterans like a Neil Pionk spending time killing penalties. I don't think Villy's going to be in that position. So if he's on this roster and playing in the games, there will be some areas that some of the veterans might be playing a little bit more than they hadn't done before.
Yeah, I mean, Pionk has been used on the PK at certain points too, Huss, so I wouldn't think that would be a problem. But, I mean, you're right. I mean, that will be a factor in the decision. The same will go for the fourth line roles. I mean, this is my other I'll try to tie this up. I'm with you. The Jets can use, Josh Morrissey's killed penalties during his career. We know Nate Schmidt, Brendan Dillon, definitely super comfortable in those kind of roles as well. So is Pionk. I don't think they'll have trouble backfilling on the PK side. But, yeah, I mean, if you're looking to add, 40, go from 24 goals to 40, Villy Hanel gives you the best chance to do that, whether that's on power play or at 5-on-5. So how big what level of risk is Rick Bowness willing to put into the structure in order to achieve that goal? And maybe Rick thinks he can get those goals from Nate Schmidt, from Neil Pionk, from Josh Morrissey, or whatever way they decide to roll. But another quick one about the lineup here, just because I don't want to lose my train of thought. The other counter to what you were saying, and I agree with you, Rick Bowness said that was his plan, but based on the fact that Sam Gagner is not in the lineup, that doesn't tell me Sam Gagner is not in the lineup on next Friday. Sam Gagner is in the lineup. To run to be on the second power play where he produced very mightily the other day with the saucer pass to Kyle Connor and the beautiful no-look to Nikolai Ehlers that gave him a wide open net. But Sam Gagner is sitting because his job is secure. The reason that Dominic Toninato and Jansen Harkins are playing is because I think they're battling for, I'm not sure what the number is right now, Huss, if it's 11, 12, or 13 or 14. But to me, those guys are fighting for one job potentially on the fourth line. If Mason Appleton is in, I think Menelainen has done enough to earn a job on the team. I don't know if that means he's the 12th or 13th forward, but to me, that Sam Gagner being out is a sign that the competition in that spot is ongoing. but not that Sam Gagner is in danger whatsoever. It's that he needs to see more from Harkins, who's been hurt, and Toninato, who had a nice goal the other night, but is definitely, I think he's been beaten out by David Gustafsson for the fourth line center job, for lack of a better term.
I wanted to ask you, and listen, we've all been expecting that Gus was going to be the guy in the middle and, to begin the season at least, and hopefully he can stay healthy and, have a great season. But Harkins, Toninato, and Menelainen all in that mix. Do you take anything like Appleton's out? They expect him to be back in time for the opener. Menelainen's getting the opportunity to play with Lowry and Barron on that third line. Is that sort of like a placeholder move, like the way Toninato took Dubois' place? Or is he higher on the pecking order and gets an opportunity to play with those guys on that third line because has a leg up on Toninato and Harkins? What do you think about that, Weber?
For me, Huss, he's played now twice with Adam Lowry, once with Mason Appleton, now once filling in for Mason Appleton. To me, Menelainen has emerged as the candidate who is ahead of the game in terms of the depth chart and the pecking order. I don't see this as a placeholder move. I don't see this as soon as Appleton comes in, Menelainen comes out. I think Menelainen is still very much Menelainen is in my opening day roster. I do not control the roster. I do not control the ice time. But for the purposes of this segment, Huss, I'm going to pretend that I'm in that role. For me, Menelainen has jumped further than anybody on the depth chart. Going into camp depth chart versus where he is now, I'm not saying he's starting the year on the third line, but to me, Menelainen is in not only on the team, he's in the opening day roster. I don't see him jumping from, third line right wing to being the 13th forward and being a healthy scratch for the opener. I still think the most likely fourth line to start this regular season, provided Appleton is healthy and there are no injuries, is Menelainen, Gustafsson, and Gagner. If Morgan Barron is not quite ready for third line minutes, then Menelainen is the third line left winger, and Morgan Barron dips down to the fourth line or is potentially replaced by Jansen Harkins. So to me, it's super interesting. That battle is still very much ongoing.
Well, you know what that means, Ken? And I know you like the wrestling references, but that means tonight, on the fourth line,
indeed,
on either side of David Gustafsson, it's Dominic Toninato and Jansen Harkins in a loser leaves town match.
So, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but it's not outrageous to suggest it, Huss. And I know that Mike McIntyre was on with the heel references. I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, definitely it's a loser of the battle is on waivers match, unless you can find a trading partner for one of them. Yeah. But the pressure's on. I mean, we could be overreacting, and maybe Harkins is just on the fourth line because he's been dealing with whatever injury kept him sidelined for a couple days of practice. He's moving well enough now. I think Harkins would be ahead of Toninato on my power rankings, but the fact that he's not getting the third line opportunity suggests to me that he is still very much in a competition. I mean, for ice time, I don't think Harkins is going to be waived, quite personally, but the door, Dominic Toninato kept the door open a little bit longer, if you will. And I mean, we know that
is Toninato not a more versatile player?
Well, he can play center and wing for sure. But I mean, Harkins,
better penalty killer.
Harkins was a natural center in junior, but yes, but Harkins also has been used as a penalty killer in camp, and I would say his ceiling is higher. So if you're depends on the role you're looking for. But this goes back to Menelainen.
It's the same role. They're trying for the same spot, right?
Menelainen is a more polished player, right? As he should be at 28 years old. He is a finished product. You know what the ceiling is, but you also know what the floor is. He's going to give you a more consistent effort, and he has a little bit more offensive upside than Toninato. He's bigger. He's a little bit more physical, probably feistier, and he can kill penalties. He's done so on the international stage. So, and he can give you a little bit. Can he give you as much offense as Harkins? Well, not in terms of straight ability, but maybe he's getting to different spots than Harkins is getting to right now. So, to me, if I'm Jansen Harkins, I want to play well because I want to be on the team and I want to be in the opening day lineup. I don't think that Harkins would look at it as if I play poorly, I'm going to be on waivers. But, I mean, we're looking at projections. So Harkins hasn't separated himself. I thought Harkins would win the job as the third line left winger. If that were more likely to be the case, then Morgan Barron would not be in that role tonight, even though he's missed the most amount of time among those players. So it's interesting because there's battles both within the battle is very prevalent this evening. And, there are still going to be there's still 2 more cuts that are going to have to be made. So I think everyone on the periphery around the bubble is definitely on high alert. I mean, you talked to Dave Poulin the other day. I mean, when you're on high alert, how do you play? Do you get relaxed and play your best, or do you tense up? I mean, that's what we're going to find out this evening.
Hey, shout out to Waiters, who dropped in a little super chat for the boys. Thanks, Waiters. Hustler and Remo look sharp. Also, can we ban the Denver Broncos from primetime football for the rest of the season? Bad news. They're in prime time, I believe, the next 2 weeks. That game was something else last night.
I got to say, my utter right field saying the Broncos were my sleeper pick. Boy, oh boy, that's one of the receipts I'm going to like to throw in the garbage can right now, because there hasn't been a lot of cooking or let's riding in Broncos country is not quite going. Sorry for the tangent, but boy, oh boy, they're talking about should they fire Nathaniel Hackett? It's what is it, week 5?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. How's that for a start? Like, he's maybe a worse start than Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, who lasted 13 games on a 5-year contract. Yeah, that was a one for the ages last night between the Colts and Broncos. Back to the Jets. Fill us in on this next week. So you're out west right now. You'll be at the game. What's the team got planned? And we talked to Pierre-Luc Dubois a little bit about, they're maybe doing some golfing and fishing, more team building. Like, what are you guys going to be doing on that? Are you going to be in the boat, or are you just going to be sitting at the hotel bar waiting for something to happen?
Well, Huss, I think Saturday is an off day for both the players and the media members. My good pal Wes Gilbertson is taking me over to Mickelson National for a round on Saturday afternoon.
Really?
Once I get my work done here, we'll be having a full training camp wrap. But Huss, the weather is starting to turn. It's still close to 20 degrees here in Calgary. So I haven't been back to Banff since 2011 when the Jets went there on their first team building trip. I believe they have practices scheduled Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They'll fly home Tuesday late afternoon. We'll be at all 3 practices. Probably a little bit of hiking in there, but yeah, I mean, also too, Huss, you know what I'll be doing? Blue Jays baseball playoffs are on. So
exactly. Let's get to it right now. I know you'll be in front of a tube this afternoon, 3:00 start. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about the Jays in game number 1 and in this series? All games at Rogers Center, which I think is going to be electric this afternoon.
Oh, it'll be absolutely dynamite, Huston. I mean, I was fortunate to be at the bat flip game in 2015 and at the Aaron Sanchez gem against the Kansas City Royals in 2016, the only game that they won that year, I believe. So I wish I was there in some ways, but I mean, hey, duty calls. You got to do the job here. So I'll be watching with interest. Not having Lourdes Gurriel is a major blow for the Jays because of his ability to handle velocity, which is what they will be seeing from Mr. Castillo and Robbie Ray. But the fact that Whit Merrifield had such a strong finish to the year would be able to give them a little bit of backing. I don't think a lot of people had Danny Jansen as DH on the bingo card for game 1, but he's earned it. I mean, this is a guy that could go yard at any time. I think the Jays should feel confident about their pitching staff. Alek Manoah is a guy you want to give the ball to in game 1. I don't see the debate. I know a lot of people are saying maybe save Gausman for later. I don't see that happening. I see Stripling getting the ball. Whatever. You try to win the series. You don't worry about going Stripling in game 2 and then trying to save Gausman for 3 if you need him, or game 1 of the next round. I think it's their time to shine. Bo Bichette had an incredible September. It's time for Vladdy to step up his game like he likes to do in big moments. And I think this is the time that George Springer shines. This is why George Springer was signed to the contract he was signed to. He's a man of the moment. He can handle the guys throwing 98 to 100, and he will lead the charge. And let's see if the young guys can follow suit. As long as their bullpen holds up, I see the Jays winning this series, but it'll be interesting to see how far they can go.
Ken Wiebe of Sportsnet on Twitter at Weeb's World. And of course, you love him along with Sean Reynolds with Kenny and Rennie with us. Hey, I do have to ask you about Hockey Canada. And of course, you're now in Calgary, where Hockey Canada is headquartered right now. I know this has been a topic, everywhere, basically. I mean, where are you at with what's happening right now? We're just seeing that Nike has now paused their support and their relationship with Hockey Canada. It really does seem like from a business side, it is completely crashing in on Scott Smith and everyone else there. And what do you make of what's happened, and where does this go from here, Ken?
Yeah, I'm not sure where it goes, Huss, but it's clear that this is a call for action from sponsors, and echoing what a lot of people around the hockey world are saying. They want to see tangible action being done. What that means in terms of dismissals or resignations remains to be seen, but it's quite clear that people want change, and they want real change, and they are basically voting with their pocketbook right now to try to instill some of that change. So what direction this goes, like I said, I don't follow the story closely enough to know to predict what's going to happen, but I am predicting changes are going to be happening. It's clear that there needs to be a change in terms of the direction and in terms of restoring confidence from around the provinces. I mean, the provinces that fuel, the fact that the provinces are not going to be sending in their money to Hockey Canada, that sends a pretty loud message to me, Huss. So
it sounds like all the money's dried up. The feds have paused, like
Right.
and their money was only 6% of the budget.
Right.
That's why all this stuff with the sponsors is so significant. Hockey Canada has essentially been running like a professional team, a professional organization for a long time. And, you've got, some money that comes in from player registration, you've got government funding, but the massive sponsorship that they had from the likes of Tim Hortons, Scotiabank, that truly was the engine that made Hockey Canada happen. And now with everything going away, I don't know that they have any choice other than, making some significant change. But with where they've dug their heels in and put themselves in a situation that I think now more than ever, it's going to take a long time to build those relationships again, even with an entirely new group. And, certainly I think the women's team and the sledge programs are still going to be supported. But I really wonder what is to come for the men's programs, the World Junior program, the World Junior tournament coming up in Halifax, where I believe they've sold all the tickets, but tickets are one part of it, sponsorship, television, all of that as well. And it really is an unprecedented situation, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's the other part that some people forget about. And I think it's important that we see some of the sponsors saying that they will be supporting, the women's program and the sledge programs directly, because because everyone's under the same umbrella, it's not the same impact. A lot of these other guys are, if we talk about the World Championship, these are professionals, right? A lot of these other people are relying on the sport for their actual livelihood, not just, future guys getting paid who star at the World Junior or playing in the World Championship. So it's a troubling situation. It needs to get sorted out. And, they're going to have to restore the faith, and they're not going to be doing that by standing pat, is how I would try to describe it.
What an interesting switch we've had today. I am wearing the suit for once, Ken, and you are looking relaxed in your Q-zip for Sportsnet.
Well, I promised to wear a suit tonight. I flew this morning. Getting back on the bird, it was nice. Things are running smoothly at the airport. So caught most of the green lights on the way to the airport. Happy to be traveling, and
it's all coming up Weaver right now.
Hey,
it's all coming up Weaver.
I love the commitment to the suit. It's looking very sharp. I know it's not your favorite attire. You prefer the hey, that's
check it out, Kenny.
That's high end. I love that. The boys set me up with some the liners myself, but unfortunately for me, one of my liners has the Athletic on it, so that'll be a collector's item.
Ken, listen, you're going to be there. Fill people in, because I know there's going to be a lot of interest in the Jets over the course of the Banff trip, the days going into next week and the start of the season. Where are we going to be able to find your content and reporting on everything with boots on the ground out there in Alberta?
Yeah, it's been a great month here. We'll have a training camp preseason wrap-up after the game here this evening. We'll be providing wall-to-wall coverage from Banff, and I apologize that I don't think that I forgot it was Thanksgiving, but we did promote a show for Monday, but forgetting it was Thanksgiving. So we will have.
You forgot it was Thanksgiving.
Because I'm not going to be going home for Thanksgiving. Yeah. I thought I was working, and we would just do a show from Banff. But I thought actually we're gonna let the families enjoy themselves, and we'll have a Kenny and Rennie preview. I'm not sure what day yet, because I'm flying home Tuesday. It'll either be Tuesday or most likely Wednesday. at some point here. So it's going to
Well,
be.
let me know. I will let the
yeah.
people know, and we'll
Yeah.
fire people out there coming out of the show. Weaver,
Greatly
have a great
appreciated.
weekend out there. I'm jealous. Enjoyed this game tonight, and can't wait to get back after it next week with the season upon us.
Yeah, it's going to be tremendous. It's a fun time of the year, and we're looking forward to it very much. And like I said, thanks for the congrats out of the gate, and thanks for everybody who made this possible.
Good stuff, Weaver. Have a great one. Thanks so much. There's Ken Wiebe of Sportsnet. Follow him on Twitter at Weeb's World. Hey, shout out a couple more nice super chats. Stonewall Dave, here's to 400 more, boys. And then another 400 more. P.S. Remo, give me a juiced marble already. Come on, I'm due. And Ticona Pauly, suits must mean court. A little sprinkle on the lawyers, Huss. LOL. Ticona Pauly, you're the best. Thanks so much for the support, folks. And thanks to everyone for their support through 400 shows. And yes, here is to many, many more. All right, still to come. Marbles at the end of the show. Curt Keilback, legendary former voice of Jets 1.0 on his new book and some great stories. And we're going to get to Eddie Tait on Bombers Elks coming up in just a minute. But here's the why not question of the day for our friends over at Not Auto Corp at Waverly and McGillivray and online at not.ca. Let's say it is the loser leaves town match tonight for a spot on the roster. If it comes down to Dominic Toninato and Jansen Harkins, who gets your support? Toninato versus Harkins in a steel cage. Who remains in the room and who is out? That's the why not question of the day. Answer us in the comments. And of course, for those with you live with us, hit us up in the chat. And again, the gang over at Not Auto Corp is busy right now as we head into the winter. If you're thinking about a new or an upgrade on your current vehicle, head down to Not before you go anywhere. Just a few of the amazing vehicles available right now. My guy Andre sent over 2018 Lexus NX 300, 2017 Jaguar F-Pace, 2018 Audi Q5 Technic Quattro, and a 2019 Volvo XC60. In addition to that, over 30 Teslas on the lot, as Not Autocorp has been the experts in Tesla and electric vehicles. And of course, they've got their very popular Tesla Experience program where you can find out everything about a switch from a traditional vehicle to an electric vehicle. And hey, the Car Lab's also rolling right now. They got winter tire specials and MPI payment plans. Why not get safe winter tires now and pay later? And warranty-approved servicing and maintenance repair on all makes. Pop down and see him, Waverly and McGillivray, our friends at Not Auto Corp, and online at not.ca. Well, we're cooking some things up with the boys at Royal again. I can tell you that the Winnipeg Sports Talk New Era toques are just about to be available. Working on some new lids as well. But hey, whatever you need when it comes to your fan gear, Royal Sports is the #1 spot for decades here in Winnipeg and frankly across Canada. The biggest selection of Winnipeg Jets gear around. Massive selection of Winnipeg Blue Bombers gear, as well as some exclusive back-to-back lids. And of course, the biggest selection of NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, World Soccer, Canada Soccer, all in one spot over at Royal Sports. And they're also the hockey superstore in town for over 40 years. Every piece of equipment you could possibly need is available at Royal. The best stick selection in town. And of course, expert skate sharpeners as well. Royal's got it all. 750 Pembina Highway. And follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And hey, we've got the suits on today, a very special day for us, 400. And a big thanks to Andrew and the gang over at F Apparel. The entire operation getting these suits was great and got to go in, fill you in on the different styles that they're the options, different fabrics, pick out the colors, get measured up, and a few weeks later and then decide what you want on the inside too. As I mentioned, just keep showing that off, the WST logo in there. But F's got a lot going on right now. Fall wedding promo. If you can book your 2023 wedding group and get fitted before the end of November, and every member of the wedding party will get a free custom shirt and 10% off their suit. a total of more than $130 or more savings per person. It pays to come in early. And they've also got, buy one suit, get one for 30% off. Perfect for anyone that's looking at a wardrobe refresh, anyone that wears a suit daily or has events coming up soon. That's F Apparel, great sponsors and friends of ours. 190 Smith Street downtown and online at that's EPHapparel.com. And hey, I got to give a big shout out to Nick and Nikki DQ. We almost should have had got a DQ ice cream cake in for the show today for $400. We'll just have to hit DQ on the weekend. It's going to be real nice tomorrow. Still plenty of time to grasp on to what's left of the summer and fall with a trip to one of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs for the great Blizzard flavors, including a few that dropped this summer. Reese's Pieces, Cookie Dough Blizzard, Kit Kat, my 2 personal favorites. It's all there. If you need a DQ ice cream cake, hit them up on Insta at DQ Manitoba. They'll get it custom made for you, ready to be picked up quick and easy at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs. Folks, great turnout in here right now. If you haven't already, please make sure you've hit that red subscribe button. And if you're watching with us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, make sure you're subscribing and downloading the audio file so you can get it as quick as possible and conveniently listen and consume the Winnipeg Sports Talk content whenever and wherever you are. We've got lots to get to. As I mentioned, Curt Keilback coming up, but big one tomorrow for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as they inch closer to another Western Division championship and hosting the West Final. Let's get ready for Bomber football tomorrow, 6 p.m. start with Eddie Tait of BlueBombers.com. Eddie, what's up? How are you?
I'm fantastic. And as I was saying to you just a minute ago, I missed the memo about the suit thing. I apologize. If you guys are planning ahead for 500, I'll wear a suit for 500 if I'm on that day. How about that?
You know what? Because you're such a good friend of ours, you've avoided a fine. Only a yellow card today, Ed. But great to have you on the show. Listen, we'll get to the game in a minute, but CFL trade deadline this week. Big acquisition. Alden Darby coming back. And, with Wilcox going back to Hamilton, I have to admit the first thing that I sort of thought was, ooh, that might mean good things for Jackson Jeffcoat going forward. Just tell us about the trade, the ability to give up Wilcox and what Darby brings back to the club at a position that they've been pretty much decimated by injuries over the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. They made that trade and the depth chart came out this morning and Alden Darby isn't in the lineup yet. He's on the 1-game injured list. I guess he just needs a little bit more time to get, used to the defense or reacquainted with the defense. Keon Adams will start at defensive end for Jackson Jeffcoat, who's still out, where Wilcox had been last week. The Darby thing's interesting, right? Because the secondary, as we talked about last week, Huss had been decimated by injuries. You had 2 rookies on that one side in Jamal Parker and Evan Holm. So I think it was a move just, to add some more experience and more depth. And we've seen this with this Bomber secondary in years past. If you go back to 2019, remember it was a bit of a mess before they got hot and they moved Brandon Alexander to safety. You had Nick Taylor that was picked up from Edmonton, same with Mercy Masson, and they worked their way into the starting lineup. So it seems like in the back end there, that's always in a bit of a state of flux, but when they get it settled, they get it settled at the right time of the year. And let's hope that's the way it's pointed this year.
I don't know how much you can speak to it, but I know there was reports about Kenny Lawler potentially coming back to Winnipeg. But how active? I mean, like the squad seems like it's, certainly championship level. But Kyle Walters in the past has made a move or two to shore things up. Certainly last year with Sergio Castillo. Were the Bombers really active? Were there other things going on, or was the key to get some help in the secondary, and even better if it can be a guy that they know so well that's won a championship with the majority of the guys in the room?
Well, one of the things that's kind of cool about being a bit on the inside here or downstairs in the football ops is the one thing I have a great appreciation for being on the other side now is how hard these guys work the entire football management structure to always be tinkering with things. It's just, when you're still thinking about adding a guy like Kenny Lawler, knowing that Greg Ellingson and Drew Wolodarski are probably not that far off from rejoining the receiving corps, just says to me about how much this crew is chasing the three-peat. And I mean, that's not shocking, right? When you're a good football team and you're 13-2, you're thinking that way. But to be contemplating a move that big, when you make a move like Darby, I guess I would say the wheels are always in motion down in football ops, and they're trying to get better all the time. And it's, even a move like picking up the other DB from Hamilton this week, who was their rookie of the year last year. Desmond Lawrence. Sorry, I had to look up his name. Desmond Lawrence was their rookie of the year last year. He got cut by Hamilton on the weekend, and they thought, there's a guy with experience. We're a little bit thin in the secondary, even after adding Alden Darby. So let's take a look at this guy. And that's just the way this group operates. They just never take their foot off the gas pedal. And I think that's part of why they're cruising along here again at 13-2.
There were reports, very interesting stuff about the Bombers sniffing around and maybe bringing back Kenny Lawler. Obviously, that didn't happen, and that's not really a topic going forward. But I guess the big question is, the guy that kind of came in to replace Kenny Lawler has had a tough time staying on the field, but when he's been on, has been phenomenal. And Greg Ellingson, I mean, the Bombers do have a luxury. It's all about the playoffs at this point. But he was back on the field today. What'd you see from Ellingson? And any idea as to whether he has a good chance of getting back on the field at some point before the end of the regular season and hopefully being close to 100% for the playoffs?
Yeah, it's hard to read anything into a walkthrough practice, but earlier this week, both him and Drew Wolodarski were running a fair bit. I talked to Wolodarski a bit yesterday. He's hoping that he can get in at least one regular season game before the playoffs. So if you lock up first, there's a couple of benefits here for the Bombers. I mean, they got the game against Edmonton here Saturday. Then you've got a trip to BC, then a bye week, then the last regular season game against BC. And if you finish first, another bye week. So there's a couple of weeks in there where you can get people healthy. The question becomes, about getting people healthy versus the rust they're going to have to shake off in real action before the playoffs start. But for guys like Wolodarski and Ellingson, they instantly upgrade you. So I don't think there's any question about whether they would be inserted into the lineup before the playoffs. But it just, again, says something about the way this team is rolling right now, that it's been a while without those two, and they've still been productive. When we're talking about a guy like Zach Collaros, who's got career numbers in passing yardage and passing touchdowns, and even without Nick Dembski for 4 games, without Greg Ellingson for however many he's been out, without Drew Wolodarski for a while. So things are really rolling on that side of the ball. And again, it says an awful lot about Collaros and why I think he's the leading candidate for MOP again.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And you know what? It has given opportunities for guys that earlier on in the season, like Rashid Bailey, wasn't getting as many balls, wasn't getting as many looks. He had a big game last week. Dembski, I mean, listen, we were joking earlier, Remis and I, about CFL fantasy. And basically, if Nick Dembski's playing the Rough Riders, start your lineup with him because he seems to own that team and, frankly, the entire province of Saskatchewan. And then, I mean, the season that Dalton Schoen's had is, an all-timer when it comes to rookie receivers. But, I mean, you add those guys in, and the Bombers will be in really, really good shape. As far as first place goes, Ed, it's unique because, I mean, these final 2 games of the season are against the team that theoretically could catch the Bombers. What are the scenarios going into this weekend? I mean, what needs to happen for the Bombers to officially clinch first place in that home playoff game to get to the Grey Cup?
Yeah, so a couple things. If BC plays Toronto in the afternoon tomorrow, if BC loses and then Winnipeg beats Edmonton, then Winnipeg clinches first place. Even if that doesn't happen, remember Winnipeg has the earlier season win over BC, so they have the leg up on the season series, and that's the first tiebreaker. So there's 2 games coming up against BC. So if Winnipeg was to lose tomorrow and still win next week, they would get first place. They've already won the season series against Calgary. So again, that's why the foot is jammed right down on the gas pedal here. These guys aren't taking anybody lightly. I think they had their eyes open a couple weeks ago in Hamilton about maybe the the dangers of looking at somebody's record and getting wrapped up in that. This Elks team will come at you because that's the way Chris Jones coaches, and they've got to be careful. And so that's the sort of the scenario for the Bombers.
So essentially, we'll know. I mean, when kickoff, what's happened in Toronto between the Lions and the Argos, and we could have a clinching scenario tomorrow.
Right.
Otherwise, and I guess the other thing that's really interesting, especially if this happens soon, like say this scenario happens and the Bombers clinch this weekend. Very similar to last year, when even in a 14-game season, this team was essentially clinched first place, like 11 games in. And with the extra bye week at the end, Ed, I'll be fascinated to see how Mike O'Shea handles, the roster who plays even in that last game, because you'll be coming out of a bye into another bye. I mean, if guys didn't play at all in that last game, you're talking about 3.5 weeks in between football games with a chance to go to the Grey Cup.
Yeah, you're kind of writing my stories for me in a couple weeks here, Huss. That's great. I appreciate it. I'm gonna jot this down. No, it's a good point. And so the thing you wonder was last year a bit of a case study for the Bombers, right? They rested guys in those last 2 games and lost them both. Again, you want to be healthy for the playoffs. That's all that matters. But if you remember the West Final here, I mean, there were a lot of people biting their tongues in half and worried about what was going on because they turned the ball over like crazy. So it's that rest versus rust thing. You can rest people and get them healthy, which is paramount, but you've got to be careful about losing your edge heading into the West Final. And the other thing that's always a factor in this league and probably every league is the salary cap, right? I had a buddy of mine saying, well, I hope they rest as many people as they can for the games at the end of the year if they clinch. Well, you can't though, because then you're essentially going to be paying 2 different players for one spot, right? For whoever you stash on the injured list or you give a week's rest, you've got to activate somebody else, and that affects your salary cap. So that's a factor to consider too. I think anybody that's just got a serious knock that's playing hurt, like maybe Stanley Bryant might be a good example. Then if you get the first place locked up, then you give him a week off. But it's not going to be emptying your practice roster just to get a look at guys and rest others because of the cap reasons.
Well, Stanley Bryant, speaking of him, let's get to the lineup. Wasn't seen at practice this week, but there he is, Old Faithful out there protecting Zach Collaros. I guess getting a few veteran days. He will be in, and that's certainly good news for both the quarterback and the team. But there are a few changes, and Keon Adams getting the start. We talked about Wilcox being what the Bombers had to give up to get Alden Darby back here. He's back in as we'll have no Jackson Jeffcoat.
Right. Keon Adams is an interesting one. I mean, he was cut by Saskatchewan earlier this year, and it wasn't a couple days later that the Bombers had scooped him up. This is the interesting thing about how this league works sometimes. It's funny because if you look at the Bombers roster, I already mentioned Nick Taylor and Mercy Masson. Those guys were such an important part of the 2019 Grey Cup, and Taylor last year too. They were kicked to the curb by a team, and so a guy like Keon Adams isn't just someone that they picked up for depth. He's going to start, and I know they like him. Same thing with Alden Darby. Experience matters, and these guys want plug-and-play guys that can pick up the defense fast, and that's why, a guy like Adams and a guy like Darby, and we mentioned Desmond Lawrence earlier, those are intriguing pickups for a team because this isn't a team that necessarily is desperate for help at positions, but when you can add people with experience, it's going to matter in the playoffs when one bad read by a defensive back could cost you a touchdown. So that's the one main one. And the other one that's kind of interesting is Reddick Cramdy will start at the dime spot over Donald Rutledge Jr. Rutledge Jr. was still dressed, but Cramdy was a draft pick of the Bombers, second-round draft pick in 2021, and he's popping off the page in practice, and when he gets into games and get his defensive snaps, he's making plays. And so this is just an opportunity for them to get another look at him, getting more work right from the opening kickoff.
And with Malcolm Thompson out, global DB Suleiman Karamoko comes in. Tell us about him. And is it just me, or the Bombers seem to be far more successful with global players than any other team in the league? Is that right? And if so, why?
Well, there's some good kickers in this league, right? And that's the one caveat. There's a lot of teams that use their globals as kickers, but I mean, Theodric Hansen set the bar, right? I'll forever remember that play in the 2019 Grey Cup when he's blowing people up. And I tweeted out a shot. I was in the press box like this a couple days ago of him working with the bags the other day, just with his boot on.
I saw that.
Grill. And people went nuts over that because they love the guy so much. But you're right. You've got him. You've got Les Maruo, the Japanese kid who gets a lot of work on defense. You've got Tomoyo Machino, another Japanese offensive lineman who's dressed this year. Karamoko, this will be a second game, I think. He played at Laval, but he counts as a global player too. And they just picked up a receiver this week from Germany. Excuse me while I look this up. Timothy Nuttall. I'm not even sure. I haven't talked to him. I don't know how to pronounce it, but he's 30 years old, but he led the European Football League in receiving last year. So I don't know. In their spare time, I don't know if these guys are watching games from Poland and Germany or what, but somebody has done a good job of scouting the global players.
One other guy I wanted to ask you about, and there's a great piece at bluebombers.com, folks, the 48-hour primer heading into the game on Saturday, involves Brady Oliveira, and it was really interesting how you sort of focused in on one particular play earlier in the year against the Elks that Brady kind of went from maybe being a little more tentative to being the bulldozer that he's turned into for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I like about Brady is he's pretty honest and open about his feelings, right? And if you go back to the summer, he was struggling and he admits this, struggling to find kind of some traction in the ground game. Trying to make everything perfect instead of just playing his kind of style, which is north-south running over people. And so he was quite a bit under the microscope. We talked about this in the summer, Huss, when I was on with you a few times, about how the ground game wasn't going. And then there was that game in Edmonton, and his numbers were pretty modest in that game. But late in the third quarter, he put his head down. And if you can find the play, he put his head right into Ed Gainey's chest and drove him back a couple of yards and ran for 10 yards. And since that play, his stats are through the roof. He's gone from averaging under 4 yards a carry to almost 6 yards a carry. And he just looks like a completely different player. I spoke to him the other day about confidence, about that play. It's in that story. I appreciate the plug. But one thing that Brady said is that, I think he put a lot of pressure on himself. He's replacing a legend in Andrew Harris. He's also from Winnipeg. He comes in and everybody expects that you're working behind this offensive line and it's just going to magically transform and he's going to have 100 yards rushing every game and have it all figured out. But we forget he's just a kid. He's in his first real year of starting, and he had to figure out a way to handle the social media and the criticism. And then he had to figure out a way too, just to hit the hole hard and trust his eyes and trust the blockers in front of him. And it's like watching two different running backs at this point now, because the guy that we're seeing right now is dramatically different than the one in June and early July.
Well, and let's face it, the running game, June, July, is a lot different in November as far as how important it is right now. And Zach Collaros has been the man, as he has been basically since he got here to Winnipeg. But that running game will be a big, big part of any Grey Cup run once we get to the colder weather. Just on our way out, thoughts on the Elks? This has been a weird season. They're much more competitive on the road than they are in front of their own suffering fans, Eddie. But it seems like Chris Jones has sort of found some guys after, a revolving door in and out of the lineup in the first half of the season, unlike anything I can remember in recent CFL history.
That's a good way to put it. It was a revolving door. It's like everybody had Velcro nameplates on the back of their jerseys, right? Because they're getting ripped off so many times and there's so much change. I'll be honest, I'm still not sure what's going on there because the roster has changed so much, but they seem to have settled on some key players at the most important positions, like Taylor Cornelius is an interesting prospect at quarterback. I'm still going to call him a prospect because I'm not sold yet. He's got a great gun. He's leads the CFL in rushing for quarterbacks, 9th overall. That's the part that scares me the most. He's got a cannon for an arm. He just doesn't always seem to throw it to the guys in the green and yellow jerseys. So that's a bit of a problem. But they've got some talent, and I guess Chris Jones they're going to have to get some wins because you are what you are. And I think they're 4-11. And so we can talk about progress, but against what standard? They haven't won a home game since forever. And I know people in Edmonton are getting frustrated or have been long time frustrated. But I guess there's some that still have faith in Chris Jones, and they're going to need some results down the stretch to reaffirm that faith.
Well, Eddie, can't wait to see what the fellas can do, looking to get to 14-2 on the season. And who knows, we could be talking about tickets going on sale for a West Final, depending on what happens in the other game as well, coming up out of the weekend. Thanks so much for doing this. Good luck to the fellas, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Right on, Huss. Appreciate it. You too. Thanks.
All right, great stuff with Eddie Tait. Looking forward to the game tomorrow, 6 o'clock start. And, of course, 4 o'clock, the doors open for the Princess Auto Tailgate Party just outside the stadium. Princess Auto Tailgate Party has been the place to be. The last few games, the atmosphere and the amount of fans that have taken enjoyed $5 beers, $3.50, popping hot dogs, DJ Finesse spinning, continues to grow each week. And if you're heading to the game tomorrow, get there a little bit early and take advantage of it. Of course, Princess Auto, great sponsors of the Bombers and Winnipeg Sports Talk, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and you can shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Our friends at Culligan Water have been wonderful supporters of WST and the water experts, serving Winnipeg as a family-owned business for over 6.5 decades. Culligan has it all: water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, and drinking water systems, as well as citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop down and see the folks at Culligan at 1200 Sargent Avenue. Give them a call at 694-5180, or find out more on all their products and services for your home, cottage, or business online at drinkculligan.com. Another great thing that'll be happening tomorrow with the Bomber game. Well, listen, Bomber game, Princess Auto Tailgate Party, your opportunity to, if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Try the amazing new ready-to-drink Canadian Club and Ginger Ale pre-mixed cocktail. Now, Canadian Club's the official sponsor of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You'll see quite a few Ryan Cokes made with Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, as well as all the great Beam Suntory products, but also the cans of CC and Ginger available throughout the stadium from our friends at Canadian Club. And if you're not at the game but you'd like to try it, pop down to your local beer store, pick it up in 6-packs. And of course, all the great Canadian Club products are available at your local Manitoba liquor marts. All right, as we continue show 400 with the suits on, very special guest coming up in Curt Keilback. Don't forget to stick around, folks. We will have a marble race. We'll hear a couple clips from Rick Bowness on tonight's game as well before the end of the program, and then we will drop the marbles coming up. But first, before we do that, let's welcome in the legendary voice of Jets 1.0, who's got a brand new book, 2 minutes for talking to myself, for the first time ever on Winnipeg Sports Talk. It's Curt Keilback. Curt, what's going on? How are you?
Hey, congratulations on show number 400. Had I known, I'd have got a tux. It's been a pretty good run you guys have had, and it's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, I got to tell you, it is, growing up, listening to all your legendary calls, really the sounds of my youth. Really excited both to have you on the program and talk about the book. I want to get to the book and some of the stories and characters in it in a moment, but be remiss without kind of starting off with Dale Hawerchuk. And of course, you spoke in that produced piece by the Jets about the Hawerchuk era. What was that like, being a part of that night? And maybe just thoughts on Dale today after that wonderful unveiling of the statue in downtown Winnipeg last Saturday.
Well, as I said in that video, it was amazing when you think he was only 18 when he showed up in Winnipeg, and so much was expected from him so soon, and he was able to deliver is incredible. But I can also remember we went on an exhibition trip into Vancouver, the Vancouver Island area, and I think it may have been a game in either Duncan or Nanaimo, BC. where all of a sudden you got to realize just how good this kid could be. Now, it was preseason, but he totally dominated. And you and I were talking off the air before about how quite often people really stand out early in a training camp, and then as the competition gets a little stronger, they begin to drop off. That didn't happen with Dale Hawerchuk. He just got progressively better. And in his second NHL game, of course, had 2 goals and 2 assists. At 18, he was more than ready to play in the NHL. And he was so well received by everybody in Winnipeg and became a part of the community. He was really shy at the beginning. And by the end, of course, he was a cool guy because he was used to all the attention. He was used to being asked questions and to talk about his past and about his future and about playing with people like Gretzky and Lemieux in the Canada Cup. So he had a tremendous career, and it was really sad that it ended as soon as it did, and a tragic consequence that he died at such an early age because he was extremely popular and a great citizen.
Well, what do you remember about the buzz and the excitement that Dale Hawerchuk brought to Winnipeg? Because, I mean, listen, you don't get the number 1 pick by being a good hockey team. There was a lot of holes on that squad. We saw the videos of him coming out of the Brinks truck at Portage in Maine, and then, of course, winning the Calder Trophy. And the Winnipeg Jets were a very, very competitive team through the 80s. It seems that it sort of started that day when Dale Hawerchuk's name was called.
Well, you get a guy like Alexander Daigle in Chicago, by example, and there have been, or in Quebec, by example, there have been other people who have come along with a tremendous amount of hoopla before they get there. And some can live up to it and some can't. Obviously, Mario Lemieux did, and Eric Lindros and Dale Hawerchuk. But so many first-round picks, so much is expected of them. I remember Greg Jolly when he was chosen by the Washington Capitals. He was a kid out of a small town in Alberta, and all of a sudden he's there in Washington. And the same thing happened with Dennis Sobchuk. He came out of Lang, Saskatchewan as a high pick in the WHA, wound up standing on stage beside Johnny Bench at 18. Some kids can't handle that. Dale Hawerchuk could, and he did. And that so much was expected so soon. Thinking back on it, I wonder if Fergie had any. Fergie obviously had no doubts whatsoever, because sometimes it's a little chancy to put that much pressure on a kid before he's even stepped on the ice in the NHL. So it made it that much more difficult and that tougher for him, but he succeeded. Curt
Keilback is our guest. Curt, I got to ask you, how'd you get the job? What do you remember about becoming the voice of the Winnipeg Jets? And had you been in the business beforehand? Just give us a little bit of a background as to how you ended up in that booth calling an entire era of Winnipeg Jets hockey.
Well, it just happened out of the blue. I was doing television in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and the phone rang one day, and it was Ken Fryer-Nicholson, a man I had never met. And he said that they were looking for people to provide color commentary for the Jets. They had some applicants. They weren't happy with any of them. But apparently Cactus Jack Wells, the legend, had walked by the office while they were discussing their frustrations with not being able to find the right guy. And Cactus said, well, get the kid's kid. He's in Saskatchewan. The kid was my dad, and my dad had worked with Cactus, so nepotism, I suppose, came into play. But it was just a glorious opportunity. And as far as the background had been concerned, I had been the voice of the Regina Pats for a couple of years, but that had been 5 years before. That was, and I mentioned before, Dennis Sobchuk and Greg Jolly were on that team. Eddie Stanowski was on that team. So I really had thought by that time that I would never again do play-by-play hockey. And yet it was something I'd always dreamed of doing. It was number 1 in my book. And to get the opportunity to do it in the NHL, albeit as a color man for the first 3 years, was a thrill I can't explain. And, of course, it worked out pretty well.
You remember the first game? What were the nerves like getting to the show and turning that mic on for the first time?
Well, actually, the first game I did was as a color man, and it was in Colorado Springs at the Broadmoor World Arena. And I do remember that. And Fryer made me extremely comfortable. He said, look, I realize you haven't even seen an NHL game before. This is an exhibition. I'll carry you through. And I said, no, leave me on my own. I think I can handle it. I had 9 years broadcast experience, so I generally fell back on what I knew. And there were some players in that game who I'd seen play junior when I was doing the Western Hockey League. And then the first play-by-play I did was one time Fryer was sick and we were in Chicago. And that was pretty exciting stuff. I think I was more excited about doing that game than I was the first game as a color man, because my dream had always been to do NHL play-by-play. And this wasn't the Broadmoor World Arena in Colorado Springs. This was Chicago Stadium, where it was very special to do a broadcast.
Curt Keilback is with us. So, Curt, tell us about the project. 2 minutes for talking to myself. It's a book. Maybe describe the book to our listeners. I won't do it for you. And how did it all come together? How long you been working on it? When you decide that, I got to put all these stories on paper?
Well, it came about over the course of a long period of time. I had written a series of editorials for a show I had done, and I didn't throw them out. There were 13 of them, I think. And then one day I was sitting and I was looking at them, and I thought, I got more stories than that. And I just began to put some stuff together, and then I would leave it. I think I left it for about 2 years. I didn't write any more stuff. And then COVID came along, and I didn't have much to do. So I'd go upstairs to my computer and I'd start writing. And sometimes I would write 5 or 6 stories in a day. Sometimes I would go 2 or 3 months and not write anything. But after I got to a fair number of stories, I thought, I think I got enough stuff for a book here. And then I got motivated and I wrote a lot more stories, a lot more opinion things at the end. And basically the 5th chapter is more opinion than anything else. And that's where there might be a little controversy come along. And I'm cool with that.
The book, as you mentioned, 2 minutes for talking to myself. Now, you touch on the entire era of Winnipeg Jets hockey, of course, the move to Phoenix with the Coyotes. But there's a few individuals that really stand out in the book for obvious reasons. One has to be John Ferguson. Give us a little taste of what you remember about Fergie and maybe a Fergie or two tidbit that people will find in the book.
John Ferguson was the most intense man I ever met. Every game to him was the 7th game of the Stanley Cup final. It didn't matter. It could be the annual hockey game between the Winnipeg Jet rookies and the University of Manitoba Bisons. Fergie had to win. And there's a story there about the time he chased Rocket Richard off the ice at the Winnipeg Arena because he even had to win an alumni game with the Montreal Canadiens. But he was extremely high when things went well. And nobody got lower when things weren't going so well. And I know I told a story not long ago, but it's not in the book, about one night in Montreal when the Jets fell behind 3-0 in the first period. And if Fergie winning in Montreal was more important than winning anywhere, because that's where he had played and that's where he'd established his tradition and his reputation. And the Jets had fallen behind by something like 3 goals in the first period. Fergie was embarrassed. He walked out of the Montreal Forum, stomped all the way back to the hotel, got into his room and decided to turn on the TV. It was a Saturday night. It was hockey night in Canada, to see what the damage finally amounted to. Turned on the TV and saw the winning goal scored by the Winnipeg Jets. We got back to the hotel. He took us all out for a great night in the town. He was jubilant. He'd won the Stanley Cup because he'd won in Montreal. And just a lot of stories in there about John Ferguson and a lot, too, I think, about Friar Nicholson. I think those are probably the number 1 and number 2 people in terms of the tales that were told.
Well, and you know what, a younger generation that's watching the show might not be familiar with the Friar, but an absolute broadcasting legend. And as you mentioned, a huge part of you ascending to the place you had in the sports community and on those Jets broadcasts.
Yeah, the Friar was a legend when I got here. He had been the voice of the WHA Jets. And of course, they had all that success. They traveled all over the world. They really put Winnipeg on the hockey map. And Bobby Hull, Anders Hedberg, Alf Nilsson, he had the opportunity to call the plays of a line that is considered by some to be the greatest of all time, certainly among the top lines that ever existed. And I know he marveled over them, and people totally enjoyed his broadcast. But he was great with me. He taught me an awful lot of things along the way. One of the most important things he taught me was not to fraternize with the players, because objectivity is important. And you don't want the coach to be a little concerned about what he might say to you, because the coach is really important in your life. And actually, from a broadcast point of view, the most important person is the head coach of the hockey team. You have to establish a rapport with him to have the information you require to be any good on a broadcast.
Well, speaking of head coaches, I've got to ask you about what you remember from Rick Bowness back in the 80s.
Well, it was interesting, and I hope he doesn't see this because I don't want to go to his head. But I remember when I went to Phoenix, and Rick Bowness came in as coach of the Phoenix Coyotes. And our color man there, Todd Walsh, said, "You've got some background with Rick Bowness. What can you tell me about Rick Bowness?" And I said, "Finest man I ever met in hockey. So, and I mean, there's others who certainly compete, Paul McLean, Laurie Boschman, Tim Waters, the list goes on. But at that time, that's how I felt. And things haven't changed. He's a good man. He's an honest man, and he'll give you a full effort. And he's determined to win, but you can talk to him. Unlike some coaches, you can talk to him, win or lose.
He certainly has been a refreshing breath of fresh air here in Winnipeg in his return, and a lot of excitement about the season that begins next Friday down at Canada Life Center.
Can I tell you a story about Rick Bowness?
Please do.
Yeah, I was just because I've been calling the Calgary Herald, and somehow they're ignoring me. I want to get a picture that was on the front page of the Calgary Herald. I think it was October 12th of 1985. And it was a picture of Rick Bowness swinging and nailing linesman Randy Mitten with a punch. The thing was, Bowness was an assistant coach. He was standing in a suit, standing on the players' bench, took a swing at Tim Hunter and missed Tim Hunter because Tim Hunter was fighting with Brian Hayward. And instead, he nailed Randy Mitten. Bowness wound up getting a 3-game suspension for his punch. And then afterwards, we managed to get a picture from the Calgary Herald at that time. I guess they were more agreeable in those days. We got the picture. My wife put it into a frame. We had a celebrity auction for juvenile diabetes, I believe it was, which was Friar's Cause. And we got this picture mounted. It looked beautiful. We auctioned it off. And you know who bought it? Rick Bowness.
We'll have to ask Bones about that. Where is that picture now? We'll do some detective work.
I'm assuming Bones has still got it, but I haven't talked to him about it. I have contacted him a couple of times with brief text messages, but I know he's pretty busy right now, so haven't talked to him a whole lot.
Curt Keilback with us. The book is 2 minutes for talking to myself. Curt, I got to ask you about a couple different sort of eras that of the club. The 80s, we talked about Dale Hawerchuk coming in, but, you had the 630 goal scorers in that season, and the Jets really did turn into one of the best teams in the league, and yet they were in the Smythe division, which seemed to be impossible and ended up being impossible for the Jets to get out of. How good were those teams, and what was it like calling the likes of the Calgary Flames in that dynastic Edmonton Oilers era, and the very tough neighborhood that Jets club resided in?
Yeah, I always thought there was something wrong with the playoff format at that time, because in 1985, it could be argued that the 3 best teams in the NHL were the Edmonton Oilers, the Winnipeg Jets, and the Calgary Flames. Yet with the playoff format of the day, they had to play off against each other in the first round, and of course the survivor into the second round. So one would always be eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, and it was impossible for more than one to make it to the Western Final. I thought in 1985, and I talked about it in my book, I spoke with Bill Sutherland, the assistant coach, and quite a few other people. We really thought the Winnipeg Jets had a heck of a shot of winning the Stanley Cup that year. That was the year you mentioned. They had the 6 guys, had the 30 goals, but they were getting so many contributions from elsewhere too. The defense was outstanding with Randy Carlyle and Dave Ellett, and the list went on of Dave Babich. I mean, they were good. They were a good hockey club, and then, of course, that was the year, too, that Dale Hawerchuk cracked his ribs in the first-round playoff series against Calgary. They did wind up winning that playoff series, but then went down to the Edmonton Oilers. And it was interesting to hear Paul Coffey talk the other day at the Dale Hawerchuk ceremony, because I had mentioned this, and I've talked to some of the Jets who mentioned this, including Dale Hawerchuk, the late Dale Hawerchuk, including Dave Ellett, and I heard Paul Coffey say it the other day. The biggest difference in the mid-'80s between the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers wasn't Coffey, it wasn't Gretzky, it wasn't Messier, it was Grant Fuhr. They could not beat the man in the goal, and he was just outstanding. And it was interesting, too, because, and I hesitate to tell this story because it sounds like the man was bragging, but he wasn't. Grant Fuhr was a goaltender coach with the Phoenix Coyotes when I was there, and he and I would often have breakfast on the road. And we'd often refer back to the 80s days, and he highly respected those Jet teams. And I said to him one day very seriously, I said, well, you know what the biggest difference between the Winnipeg Jets of the mid-'80s and the Edmonton Oilers of the mid-'80s was? I looked at him, and before I could answer, he said, the goaltending. He was just being honest. I didn't think it was coming across as bragging, but he was absolutely dead on.
Yeah, those are the memories I have as well. And when you think back to, and listen, some questionable decisions from a Jets coaching perspective. I mean, we think back to the 90s series when, they were up 3-1 and then going back and forth between Beauregard and Essensa and Bo getting the start. I mean, plenty of bar top conversations for years about that. Into the 90s, though, I mean, Teemu Selanne had the magical 76-goal season, and there was that new young core, Selanne, Zhamnov, Keith Tkachuk. Curt, when you think back, I mean, what do you remember about Teemu emerging onto the scene, and then maybe touch on Keith, who had a very interesting path here in Winnipeg, where he signed the deal with Chicago, it got matched, lost his captaincy, which was a topic we've been talking about recently here due to current events, and then went and scored 50 before the team left. I mean, those two players, Tkachuk and Selanne, sort of were those guys if you think about the late era of Jets 1.0.
It was interesting because I remember the first time I met Teemu Selanne, and it was a year or maybe 2 years before he actually came to play for the Winnipeg Jets. He'd just been drafted, and there were 3 Finns who came over together. They were all sitting on the bench and watching the Jets at training camp. And, of course, most times Europeans come over, and they tend to be shy. They're not comfortable with the language. But this one kid was so refreshing, and it happened to be Teemu Selanne. He spoke openly, had a big smile on his face, so the same personality that he carried right through his career was there from the beginning. And that's when I learned that had he not been a hockey player, he wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. So this was you looked forward to watching the guy play because he had such a refreshing attitude. Keith Tkachuk, I remember the first time we met him, it was in Edmonton, and he had just come back from the Olympics. He'd been with the U.S. team, and he joined us, and he walked right over to the media. We're sitting watching the practice, and he introduced himself. And very comfortable, had a good conversation with him, and obviously extreme self-confidence. You could see it from the beginning. And Keith had an interesting career here in Winnipeg. He, too, like Dale Hawerchuk, married a local girl. But in some ways, their paths went differently because, while Dale was always popular, Keith had kind of a mixed reaction from people. There were some who liked him and some who didn't like him. He could be abrasive or he could be warm. To me, he was always great. I got along great with Keith Tkachuk, and I appreciate that. But I also understand why some people maybe didn't think so highly of him.
Well, it's funny. I mean, when you think back, both of those players, Selanne and Tkachuk, signed RFA deals with other teams. I mean, Selanne signed with the Flames before he even played here. The Jets matched it, and the rest was history. The Tkachuk one happened later on, and I think that made him a little bit more of a lightning rod for Winnipeg Jet fans. That being said, on the ice, from what you guys saw, I mean, those two players in particular gave a jolt of energy to the team and the city, probably unlike anything we'd seen since Hawerchuk.
Oh, there was no question. It was exciting, and particularly that rookie year of Teemu Selanne. You know, I think back, and there were 3 years that really stood out, and that was the first Hawerchuk year when he won the Rookie of the Year award. And of course, the team improved by 48 points, which was unprecedented at that point. And then, of course, that 85 team that I spoke of earlier with the 630 goal guys that I really thought was going to win it all. And then the Selanne rookie year. I mean, Tkachuk was impressive that year too, and there were others, but to score 76 goals in your first year there, and every time he got on the ice, you expected him to score a goal. You expected a breakaway, and it was so much fun to watch. A real treat all the way through that season.
Curt Keilback, longtime voice of the Winnipeg Jets 1.0 with us, has a new book out called 2 Minutes for Talking to Myself. I will admit, Curt, the first year of the Coyotes was a time where I basically have just blocked that out of my mind and my memories because it was so difficult for people here in Winnipeg. But you were right there. What was that first year in the desert like as the Jets became the Phoenix Coyotes?
Well, it was so different from Winnipeg. I mean, people had no idea what hockey was about. They did actually cheer icing. And, you know, the one lady I spoke of in the book, and she was a bartender at a little establishment that I used to frequent occasionally. And she asked me one time for tickets to a game. And I said, sure, Sue, I'll get you a couple. And she went. She and her mom went. And so the next day I went back and I said, so how did it go? And she said, well, it was great. We loved the game, but something really troubled me. And I said, what was that? Well, my mother's quite elderly, so she decided that she wanted to leave early. So we left after the third period, and so did everybody else. He thought there were 4 quarters like everything else in American sports. So it was stuff they had to learn that were different. And some of the comments, some of the things that were written by the reporters in the papers. But in fairness, the man who wrote for the Arizona Republic that first year confessed to me the first day he had never seen a hockey game before in his life. And now all of a sudden he was a beat reporter with a team. I can't imagine anything tougher than that.
No kidding. I'm trying to wrap my head around that myself. What was the building like? What was the booth like? I mean, those first few games, does anything stand out from, the birth of Coyotes hockey, if you will, in the desert?
It was at a basketball facility, so the arena wasn't facilitated for hockey. In fact, there were 3,000 seats where you could only see 2/3 of the ice because it was blocked off by the lower deck because of the size of a basketball court. And as far as the broadcast was concerned, I had a great broadcast location there. They didn't have a press box because you don't have press boxes for basketball. You sit courtside. So they just blocked off an area of seats. And it was great. And it was right in the middle of the crowd. So the atmosphere was there. And I got to know the people in that part of the building because they were all season ticket holders. The only thing is the vendors would come by and people would stand in front of you. So every once in a while you'd miss a call of a goal because maybe the cookie salesman was standing in front of me. But it was a good atmosphere, actually, in that building. I did enjoy calling games more at the old America West Arena than I did at the Glendale facility because of being right in the middle of the crowd. But you got asked some strange questions and some comments were made. And I also remember they made the playoffs that first year. And they had a whiteout, which I know a lot of people in Winnipeg didn't think was proper, and I understand that. And one of the people who was at the whiteout asked me afterwards. He said, "So was that like Winnipeg?" And you hate to sound like home's better than where you are. And I said, "Well, it's pretty good, but no, it was nothing like Winnipeg on a whiteout." So then they won that game, and then they had another game, and again they won. And the same guy came up to me and said, "So was it like Winnipeg tonight? It was even louder." And I said, "Well, yeah, it was louder, but still not Winnipeg." Then they came back for Game 5 and an opportunity for the Jets to win that series against the Mighty Ducks as they were then, and that building was probably almost as loud as the Winnipeg Arena. And the team came out flat, and they lost that game. They wound up losing the next 3, so it was a strange situation.
Curt, this has been so much fun. Fill people in on just maybe a bit of a synopsis on 2 minutes for talking to myself and let people know where they can pick it up.
Well, it's a story of all the years that I covered the Winnipeg Jets and the Phoenix Coyotes, and particularly the Jets, the different eras. It's also, the 5th chapter is primarily about broadcasting, some of the things that happened, like when there was a $58,000 goal scored that wasn't insured and the reason as to why. And so a lot of stuff in there that, and also some personal things of how I got into broadcasting and some of the things. I was a bit of a space cadet sometimes and things that happened along the way and got caught in naivety step forward a couple of times. So yeah, it was an interesting, I enjoyed writing, and let's put it that way. And it's available at McNally Robinson, and it's available at Indigo certainly in Manitoba and area. And I'm hoping that soon it will be available in Saskatchewan. I know there's an audience for it there, and Alberta and even BC. So it's and available online, Amazon, Google, Nook, whatever other outlets there are, and of course, Friesen.
And folks, you can also check out more on the book and Curt at the website, CurtKeilback.com. Very simple, CurtKeilback.com. It's all there. One of the bits, I have to ask you this before we go, because I vividly remember coming into the building. I'd been working, and I got off a little early. The attendants at the arena were quite kind to myself and some other youngsters at the time, and I jumped in to that Jets Ottawa Senators game midway through the 3rd period, and the Jets were up 6-3. Bob Kudelski goes on to score a hat trick. The infamous peanut butter game. I know you've got a bit in the book on this. What do you remember about that, and what did that look like from the press box high atop the Winnipeg Arena?
It was incredible. It was incredible because that was a game that it wasn't a very good game to begin with. Neither goaltender played well, neither team played well, but the Jets were in command with a 2-goal lead late. And then, of course, it got tied. And when it got to overtime, and the Jets lost. That night, they had given a jar of peanut butter to everybody who entered the building. Well, when you get disgusted and you just happen to have a jar of peanut butter in your hands, it becomes a projectile. And out of the stands there must have been over 1,000 jars of peanut butter, and they were thrown down to the ice course. They splattered. It was ugly. It looked like, I don't want to describe it. It looked like the rodeo had been through. And of course, the referees were hiding. The Jets, the goaltenders pulled the nets over themselves, and it was hilarious, actually. And nobody got hurt, but. Then the very next day, the Jets made a move that they planned to make anyway, but they decided to accelerate it. They took the C away from Dean Kennedy and gave it to Keith Tkachuk so they could just get over what had happened last night and hopefully make people forget about it. But it's something that should never be forgotten about. And ever after that, of course, I don't think they gave jars of peanut butter out. They generally gave anything away as people were leaving the building. It worked a little better.
Well, I have a funny story actually about that. My good friend and former boss when I was selling tickets for the Jets, Gord Dimitri, was the account rep at the time that had done that deal with Kraft. And he got there at the start of the game, made sure the promo was all happening, and then actually had a flight later on in the game with his wife. I think they were going to Mexico or something like that. So everything went well, met the clients, fantastic, that's great. End of the first period, off to the airport. This is before everyone had cell phones. He didn't find out about the disaster that had happened on his account on that game sponsorship night until he got back, from Mexico a week later. We still laugh about that. Certainly one of the more infamous nights in Winnipeg Jets history, and all of Jets history, as told by Curt Keilback, is in this book, 2 Minutes for Talking to Myself.
I've not seen a video, come to think of it, of the peanut butter night. If anybody's got one, they should get it to you.
We got to talk to Pascucci about that. If anybody has it, it'll be Scooch. He's the true Winnipeg sports historian, and that vault that Joe has, if anybody has it, it's Joe. So we'll reach out to him. Curt, this has been so much fun having you on the program. Let's do this again sometime, and certainly all the best with the book. I'm really enjoying it right now, and I think Winnipeg Jet fans will absolutely love the stories and memories that you have in 2 minutes for Talking to Myself.
Well, thanks, Huss. I've totally enjoyed it, and excuse me, I'll be back anytime.
Appreciate it. Have a great Thanksgiving long weekend, and we'll do this again soon, Curt. Be well.
Thank you. You too.
All right, man, that was an enjoyable chat with Curt Keilback. Thanks again to Curt. And I can tell you that in late November, Curt is going to be doing a book signing here in Winnipeg, and we'll have him on again in and around that. We'll get you the details on it, but really appreciate Curt jumping on the program today. All right, gang, Friday afternoon, show 400. You know what's up. Marbles time. The registration is open. If you're with us live on YouTube, get in the chat, put !marbles. All we ask is that you give a little thumbs up. Oh, we got 200. Nice. Let's keep that going. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't already, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you are eligible to win our version of the Masters Green Jacket, the WST Canadian Club hoodie. So we'll have one of those coming up for you in just a few minutes. So Marbles open. We'll give you a couple minutes to get registered. If you're new, welcome. Trust me, you're going to want to be in on this. All you got to do, subscribe to the channel, hit !marbles, and we'll have some fun in just a couple minutes. But with the Jets in Calgary tonight to take on the Flames, let's get a little bit of an update from Jets head coach Rick Bowness, who spoke after the morning skate today. Remo, we'll just go down in order. First off, talked about Mason Appleton, who's not in the lineup tonight. Here's Bones.
Upper body injury, so we're just going to give him the couple of days to improve here. So there's no need for him to play tonight. We know where he'll be on the starting lineup. So it's the best thing for him to give him another couple of days and make sure he's ready to go next Friday.
Yeah, sorry, Huss. You couldn't hear that, but it's done. You can hear the next one.
Awesome. All right, so there's Rick Bowness on Mason Appleton. They do expect him to be available for next Friday's home opener and season opener for the Winnipeg Jets here in Winnipeg. All along, it was gearing up towards one final preseason game of somewhat of a dress rehearsal. Here's Rick Bowness on this being quite close to his opening day lineup.
Would this be better to say this is close to rather than the opening night lineup?
That's right on. You couldn't have said it better myself. No, that is very close to our lineup. There'll be a couple of additions and changes as the week progresses, but for now, that's as close as we can get to the opening lineup for tonight.
All right, so there's a little bit more from Bones on the opening lineup. Here's more from Bowness discussing, the ongoing fight for roster spots.
It's an ongoing fight, exactly. So and anyone who thinks they've just got a spot here is given to them is mistaken. Those spots have to be earned. Now, clearly, your top end guys they're playing, right? So, but the guys that are on the bubble, game in and game out, it's an ongoing fight. Every game matters.
All right, well, every game matters, and there's only one more chance to impress Rick Bowness, Scott Arniel, Brad Lauer, Marty Johnson, and be a part of that opening day roster. We will see Dubois back in the lineup tonight. Thanks again to Pierre-Luc for joining us yesterday on the program. If you missed that, make sure to check out yesterday's episode. Blake Wheeler back in along with Cole Perfetti. Rick Bowness talked about that line heading into tonight and the season.
We want to see what that line looks like, and they've looked good when they were together. So anyways, we just got to keep it together. We got to give them a chance to play tonight. What we've seen so far, we've really, really liked, and I've mentioned that before. A guy like Cole, it's good for him to have some big guys on his line and experienced guys that are reliable at both ends of the ice, but will buy him some time in the O-zone as well, by using their size and strength. So what we've seen of that line so far, we've really liked.
In terms of style, how do they differ, say, from that combination of Scheifele, Connor, and Ehlers?
They would play like Connor and Ehlers and Mark. That's a very high tempo line, man. They get the puck, they're going. With Doobie and Wheels, they're going to hang on to the puck a little longer. And so it is different styles, but regardless of the style, there's got to be chemistry, right? And it all sounds good, but there's got to be chemistry between the three guys, and the chemistry that we've seen so far we like, and that's why they're going to stay together tonight.
All right, Rick Bowness on the Jets' second line, essentially. If you look at the depth chart, Dubois, Wheeler, and Perfetti. One more from Bones. Talked about Ville Heinola pairing up with Nate Schmidt in the lineup tonight.
We got to see what it looks like. They have not played together. Ville was on the right side with Sandberg last game, so now he's going to go to the left side. But we won't know what it looks like until we give it a chance. And Calgary's going to listen. They had a great lineup in here the other night. I know they'll be coming at us with full force tonight, and we get that. So now we got to see who can handle that and who can't.
All right, there is Rick Bowness. Game tonight, again, not on television. It'll be streamed at winnipegjets.com. All right, hey, I had a great time at Boston Pizza last night watching the game. Why, you might say? Well, the wings were great. The beer was cold. The company was excellent. The game was horrible. However, if you're on the Colts, the under and over 3.5 field goals, it somehow made that one watchable and, in fact, enjoyable. We'll get to Coolbet lines in a minute. But Boston Pizza is the place to watch every NFL game this season. Enjoy delicious BP pizza flights and ice-cold Bud Draft on special for $5 every game, and you can enter to win one of two grand prize trips for two for an NFL weekend in Vegas, including airfare, hotel, NFL game tickets, plus a bonus NHL game. First trip is November 11th to 13th for the Raiders Colts. Second trip, New Year's Eve weekend, Raiders Niners, and the Knights Preds on New Year's Eve. Watch the NFL and enter to win at any Winnipeg, Selkirk, Steinbach, Morden, and Portage Boston Pizza location. And hey, the weekend is here. Nothing can make that Friday night better than maybe a couple 1919s from Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug. Got to give a shout out to our pal Rick Tallou, New Norway Rick, who just sent me a very nice DM. You're doing some work here in Winnipeg and listens to the show all the time, wanted to support us. Picked up a delivery from Little Brown Jug to some of their customers here. And he's looking forward to getting his hands on one of those too. Pop down and see him. Beautiful patio. Going to be nice tomorrow. Might be a great day to have a couple outside. Brewery and tap room always open with all of the great Little Brown Jug brews. You can also, like Rick did, order for citywide delivery at littlebrownjug.ca and pick it up at your finest local beer store as well. All right, Remo, marbles are open. I'm not sure if you want to just close that up or everyone. Last call for marbles. We got Edwin Encarnacion throwing out the first pitch right now as the Blue Jays get ready to go. And man, this is going to be what a great way to kick off the weekend. 400 show, put the suits on, and then ditch the suits and sit down, crack a 1919, and watch the Toronto Blue Jays. Remo, if you are ready, I mean, if you want to close that off, I've got a couple of other people that we need to put in for today's marble race.
Sure. Do we do Coolbet lines? Do we go over those?
No, we will do that, but I've just figured I'd give this to you right now as we were doing that. I've got the Coolbet lines ready to go
I closed it up, or should I resume it real quick?
No. That's fine. It's closed it up. We've had plenty of time to get in. Now we need to add Curt Keilback.
Okay, wait, hold on. Make sure I got all these. I gotta be honest, I got a bit emotional there with Edwin Encarnacion throwing out the first pitch. I know that I'm cheering for Seattle, like Winnipeg Jets defenseman Brendan Dillon, who's rock of the M's cap on the plane. But I mean, everyone was hopped on the bandwagon for those 2015 run, and Encarnacion Jets legend, or not Jets, Blue Jays legend for sure from those years. So that was pretty cool. Threw a strike.
You know what? I tell you what. Let's give Edwin a marble.
You want to give
Edwin's getting a marble today. He just made the appearance both on the mound and on the show. We also need Curt Keilback.
Okay.
Ed Tait.
Yeah.
Ken Wiebe.
Yeah.
PLD.
Yeah.
And for his shutout, as suggested in the chat, Big Save Dave. Big Save Dave.
How about Big Bad Brad?
Well, you know what? We can put in Big Bad Brad as well if you'd like. Wishing him well in his stint with the Moose. We'll see you when we see you. We'll certainly see you next Saturday for the Moose home opener. But yes, okay. So those are our ads. We'll add those in. You can get things ready, and I will quickly get to the Coolbet lines. By the way, the pick today, the daily pick, was Blue Jays to win this game. Finished up at minus 122 on the money line, which was interesting because it kind of came down. Oh, it finished up at minus 128. It was minus 133 yesterday. A little later on, Mets minus 149 against the Padres, who were on the road at plus 132. And tomorrow's game, Cleveland minus 115 over the Rays at plus 102. We can tell you that earlier today in game one between those two teams, the Cleveland Guardians came up with a 2-1 win. Unreal start for Shane Bieber, giving up only 3 hits in the game. So Guardians up there. CFL is back tonight. We've got one game, and that's Saskatchewan and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. 2 tomorrow, Ticats minus 2.5. These numbers have basically been steady the entire week. Argos, 1.5-point favorites over BC tomorrow. Bombers laying 13 at home against the Elks. And the Montreal Alouettes, with William Stanback activated, 7-point favorites against the Ottawa Redblacks. And big good luck to Bobby Dice, a favorite of many people here in Winnipeg, who will be behind the bench in the absence of Paul Appolise, who was fired as the interim head coach for the Ottawa Redblacks. All the NFL lines are up. Don't forget, Packers-Giants early, 8:30 start in London. Packers 8-point favorites. Check out today's Lock Shop for our best bets. And tomorrow, the Lock Shop will hit our favorite parlays of the weekend, a few props, and then we'll also be dropping an NHL futures show over the course of the weekend. Now, with the games on right now, I don't see the season odds, but I can tell you, and Remo will get your thoughts on this. I said that I'd ask the Coolbet guys for the bookies to drop us a line on total combined goals for the Scheifele, Ehlers, and Kyle Connor line. I was thinking it would be around 100. 106.5 is the number with minus 115 on either side. So that's a big number. I think if the guys stay healthy the entire season, they can hit it. But that's part of the reason why you see unders being so profitable is that, the minute a guy misses a chunk of the season, hopefully that won't happen. Very difficult to hit such a high number. But that'll be in the NHL season specials. And that'll be up a little later on today, so you can check that out. We'll certainly talk about that as we get ready for the puck drop next week.
Yeah, I remember last year I had pretty much lock buttoned Ehlers over on the point total, and he was on his way to smashing it, except he got injured, and that happens. You can't predict it. So in a perfect world, yeah, you think that they're going to hit the over. I mean, no one wants to bet an under. Betting an under kind of sucks unless you're betting under points on last night's game. Then you're just laughing like the NFL game last night. But I think over is more fun, and especially when you're betting on your favorite Jets players' point totals.
Yeah, it was just sick last night. I mean, being on the over 3.5 field goals, the under, the Colts. I mean, I actually loved that game. I mean, it was like watching a train wreck, but I don't think I could have nailed it better with the daily picks, and we won all the bets last night. So very hot coming into the weekend. Hopefully the Jays can run the table and have a perfect week of our daily picks on the Coolbet Twitter feed and Instagram. Make sure you're giving Coolbet Canada a follow.
Yeah, we haven't talked about last night's NFL game at all, but I was playing hockey and I was getting group text message about how horrible the game was. And then I log on to Twitter and I just laughed at all the memes. I watched overtime as well, but this Nathaniel Hackett has shown from game one that he's not qualified to be an NFL head coach.
That wasn't Nathaniel Hackett's fault last night. That was Russell Wilson.
Well, I think
we can blame the coach, but they're paying him $245 million to come in. He just simply didn't get the job done. And I don't know if you've seen Kyle Brandt from today. It's everywhere on Twitter. Check out @Kyle Brandt. Talked about Russ, and it was one of the most damning indictments of a so-called leader you'll see in the National Football League. Ugly start to the season in Denver.
Russ looks terrible. I agree, but some of their red zone play calling, they can't score touchdowns when they get into the red zone. When you're 4th and 1 going shotgun, Huss, you're telling everyone you're going to be passing on 4th and 1. Richard Sherman, after the game, went so nuts, having PTSD.
Run the damn ball!
And I'm loving all the memes like, let Russ cook. This is Russ cooking, or this is now the new one is, the Broncos country, let's ride. And it's like a picture of the ride, and it's Austin Powers when he's like stuck in that little hallway trying to reverse out. I think it's so funny. Everyone just dumping all over the Broncos.
Zachary Wynn in chat, Broncos country, let's hide.
Yeah,
that's exactly. And you saw all the people leaving before overtime started last night.
Enough.
By the way, Zach, have a great weekend. Bison's off this week, and I know Zach's going to be, I believe, at game 2 tomorrow between the Jays and the Mariners. Hope you see a big win. All right. Well, listen, before we finish up the program and get the marbles, I think there's only one thing to do, and that is cue up the man himself, Tristan Rivers Music, with the WST Friday Marbles theme song.
It's Friday. Another week of work's gone by. You deserve to treat yourself. Maybe an ice cream cake or a bottle of rye. Before the whole day, so that's you can't deny. Why use effort even for pleasure? If I like to try, it's not a marble race. No, it's just separate into the worst. Marble race. Just play marbles with the punctuation first. Marble race. Don't spam or you will survive. Marble race. No more for it's too late. Let's go.
All right, time for marbles. I've undone the button. I've got the suit. I've got the tie in Brian Burke mode now, Reem.
Okay, wait. We need to get a look at this.
Yes, exactly. It's open.
Oh my God,
Berkey, just let it hang.
That's good. That's
Just
good.
letting it hang. And we're just about at happy hour. But first, we've got to get to the marbles. Lots of fans still of the Coils of Power, although we have gone back to back on that one.
Yeah, we've
What
done it a
about
lot.
Devil's Chaos, number 12?
You want? Sure, I can do that.
Have we done that one before?
Not for a while. I think we've done a lot of these. I'll go to it, number 12. We have 180 marbles in here.
Nice. Big marble race today. Brad, great week of shows, guys. Let's finish off with a marble that doesn't get bounced over the top rope. Yeah, no doubt. Well, we'll see what happens. We're going to Devil's Chaos today. We've got 180 marbles in.
Yeah, 190. Sorry, 190.
190. Beautiful. Pushing 200. Is your marble hot or not? Marbles fashion show. Oh, interesting. All right, gang. If you haven't seen this before, everyone that entered has a marble. First place, we've got the WST hoodie for you. You'll have to just fire us an email at winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. Afterwards, make sure you've hit that red subscribe button so you're eligible for the prize. And without further ado, thanks again to everybody for 400 great shows. Here's to hundreds and hundreds more beginning on Tuesday after a long weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. All right, Devil's Chaos. Here we are. 190 marbles in the hopper. Let's drop them to finish off another great week on WST.
And they're off.
Here we go.
Oh, it's dark in here. I can't really see.
Rob Mahoney, Russ Lowen, Logan Tanner Creaver with right. Weber, Ken Wiebe out in the front. Now we've had a little bit of a play. Oh, Peg City dude just got thrown over the top rope. Ray Purd, Turd Ferguson in the mix. Very, very close right now. Zach C, Dunk Dynasty, Turd Ferguson, Sean, Mike Irving. Oh, Weeb, bye-bye. Pretty and Pionk. This is, oh my God, this is a murderer's row. This is just basically, you just got to survive and get through right now.
Oh my God.
David Ranville is going to, this is.
It's raining marbles.
That's exactly what's happening right now. David Ranville has survived. Keith S, though, going into the cylinder as the leader right now. Chad Morrison, no, he got thrown over the top rope. Keith S still looking pretty good. Zach C right now coming up in second. Mike Lederney in third place right now. And as I said, there's Bravo Brian, Bart Oman falling from the skies. We've got Keith S going into, off the Trident. Getting thrown in. Earl James is in the mix.
No, he's out.
He's okay. Earl's out. Keith, Zach, Mike, Jano, Mark A. Everyone's seemingly still alive, but it's just a matter of staying alive until the end right now. Mike Lederney, Keith S, Zach C right now. See what's going on. This I don't remember this one at all.
There's lava. Gotta watch out here.
Uh-oh, you could get burned big time. Keith very carefully moving through. Zach C, Paul Carr, Mark A. But looks like Keith S right now has the lead. Greg Friesen just got bounced over the top rope. Oh, Paul Carr's taking the lead now. This cannot be going much further. He's in space right now. Can he make it in? Can he make it in? Oh! No! Bounced over. It's still alive. Who can make it? Andrew Lamb? No! He missed it too.
It's the birthday. It's his birthday. Dark Moon. He's going
Dark
for
Moon's birthday. Could it be Bartholomew? No! Dark Moon. Birthday boy. MC Stormy. No! Okay, Dark Moon. Can he get it in? Will he safely get in the big Dark Moon, the birthday boy? Called his shot. Wins today's marble race. Edwin just got thrown over the top rope. Let's see how many people even finish this of the 190 we started. Art Cooper. Keith S is in. See Dave the Fantasy. Big save. Big save, Dave. Oh, there we go, Dave. Johnny Wu. Shane Mason. Mrs. Emus. John D. Troll Poet Laureate just got bounced. Bulls 8. Oh, I see Ross. Ross is still in. I know Shorn and Ross will be going head to head. We got to see where Shorn ended up, although he, like so many, probably got bounced a little earlier on. Very orderly fashion with these marbles coming in at the end. Rob Somerville, here's Phyllis. Give yourself a pat on the back if you finish this race, because that was as savage as we've seen with guys getting thrown over the top rope. Here comes the fire. There's going to be some marbles getting burned, I think. Candace Jane's in there. 22 Canuck just got bounced. Running Man and Ryan Kernicki are about to get burned, I think.
Were there any side bets to let staff go home early? Going on Wrench Deucers asking in the chat.
You know what? Ross probably, that's basically what he says. If he beats Shore and everyone gets to go home early, hopefully everyone would have been going home early anyways because of the Jays game today. But sorry. Dark Moon. Way to go. What a great birthday gift. A victory. It's something that money can't buy. A victory in the Winnipeg Sports Talk marble race today. Let's just go down, Remo. Let's see how many people actually finished and how many people got bounced, because it was, I don't think I can remember raining marbles the way that it was before. Andy B, Johnny Woo, Shane Mason, Zenus, there's our top 10. Lori Loving Life. Kenny's water bottle in with a nice top 25 position.
But Seattle's up 1-0 already.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I was doing the marble race. We just got to keep doing marble races. It's good luck, Huss.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's going to be in on that. It's your boy Bruce finishes. I'm going Big Bad Brad. Big Bad Brad got 44th. Pretty good. One bird in at 47. Bruce H. Keep on going here, room. Let's see how close we get down to. Will it be more than half people finishing? 85.
Yeah. Yes, more than
it was. Wow. I thought it was going to be a lot more that got knocked out. It's the last one. Okay, so yeah, so of 98 finishers, which would mean 92 eliminations. But yes, Dark Moon, the winner on your birthday. This is awesome. Dark Moon, send us an email, winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com. We'll hit you up and you can come by and pick up your hoodie at some point next week. T. Pauly, congrats again, WST on 400. Happy Thanksgiving. Bragging rights for a whole week. Guys, thanks so much. Listen, we appreciate the support. We could not do it without all of you. We certainly couldn't do it without our great sponsors. And listen, I'm looking forward to this game tonight. A couple hockey pools this weekend. And then tomorrow, the season is on. Tuesday's show will be the real opening night in the National Hockey League with 2 games. And then it is on. We, of course, have to wait until Friday for the Winnipeg Jets, but that'll give us a little bit more time to talk about the opening night roster and everything happening around the National Hockey League. And should be a good one tonight. Lots of talk in Calgary today. Mackenzie Weegar, 8-year extension. The job that the Flames did, turning the loss of Johnny Gaudreau for nothing and Matthew Tkachuk into Weegar, Huberdeau, first-round pick prospect, and then signing Nazem Kadri. I know we gave the offseason champs to Ottawa, but I got to say the job that Brad Treliving did was incredible. I'm sure the broadcast tonight will have quite a bit on that as well. Folks, once again, shout out to the gang at F Apparel. Love the suits and love all of you. Have a great Thanksgiving with your families. Enjoy some nice weather. Go Bombers tomorrow night. And we'll see you for episode 401 of Winnipeg Sports Talk coming up next Tuesday, live at 1 p.m. right here on YouTube. Thanks for everything. We'll see you then.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.